News now, Kevin McCarthy ousted this morning. History unfolding in Washington. The House of Representatives now without a leader after lawmakers vote to remove Kevin McCarthy as Speaker.
So I may have lost a vote today, but as I walk out of this chamber, I feel fortunate to have served the American people.
Now, Congress navigating uncharted territory as the search for a new House Speaker begins. More on the unprecedented vote plus reaction and what happens next. Tragedy on campus breaking this morning. Police in Baltimore searching for a shooter who opened fire at a historically black university, injuring several people, all during homecoming celebrations. But we're learning about what happened. Plus, a different kind of drug deal. The White House announcing a historic price negotiation between top drug makers and Medicare. More on the program and why it may not be a done deal just yet. And increasing your odds. What if the only thing standing between you and winning the lotto wasn't luck, just a little bit of math? Well, a pair of British professors say they figured out the winning formula. We will try to break it down before tonight's big Powerball drawing.
Oh, well, now we're going to win.
There you go. I know. Magic.
Very exciting.
You got to stay for that. That's quite the tease.
We all win. Yeah. Good morning. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Thanks for being here. We get started this morning, of course, with the turmoil in Washington after a historic vote to remove Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House of Representatives. This was after less than 9 months in that leadership role.
The office of Speaker of the House of the United States House of Representatives is hereby declared vacant.
The final vote was 216 to 210 in favor of removing McCarthy from the speakership. 8 Republicans joined all House Democrats in voting to oust him. It's the first time in U.S. history lawmakers have formally voted to remove a sitting speaker in the middle of a term. Opposition to McCarthy grew among Republicans after last weekend's deal to avert a government shutdown. The chair of the Financial Services Committee, North Carolina Congressman Patrick McHenry, is now serving as interim speaker until a replacement is chosen, beginning what could be a long process. NBC News congressional correspondent Julie Sirkin joins us now with the latest. Julie, good morning. So certainly an unprecedented day yesterday on Capitol Hill. Just walk us through what happened before the vote, after the vote, and what we're hearing from the now former House Speaker.
Yeah, guys, it was quite a shock, not only to reporters covering this, but also to members who were streaming out of a closed-door Republican conference meeting, some with tears in their eyes, some with shock on their faces. The way this all came about was really since the beginning of McCarthy got his gavel. He made this handshake agreement with some of the far-right conservatives, including Congressman Matt Gaetz, to get their support to get the gavel in the first place, that any one of them can bring up what's called a motion to vacate that triggers a full House vote. And then, easily enough, McCarthy loses his gavel with just a handful of votes. 8 Republicans voting against him. The final tally was 216 to 210 because Democrats decided early in the day yesterday they were not going to get involved in the House Republican internal drama. They were going to stay out of it. But the thing is, they voted against McCarthy here. They sided with Gaetz and those 7 Republicans. And that's unfortunately what caused McCarthy to lose his speakership. I want you to take a listen to what McCarthy had to say right after that all happened. Watch.
Doing the right thing isn't always easy, but it is necessary. I don't regret standing up for choosing governance over grievance. It is my responsibility. It is my job. I do not regret negotiating. I will not run for speaker again. I'll have the conference pick somebody else.
I started to completely hate school because I already knew the thing they were about to tell me. But right now, I'm a little bit more interested because I realize I can learn something new.
For Monroe, it's important that we encourage our kids to want to be here at school and find something of themselves here.
Really engage students in learning that isn't necessarily always tied to a textbook, but ways in which they can get really hands-on learning.
Gardening wasn't one of the things I thought of. Now that I can see that plants can do some very weird stuff, I want to see if there could be a weird herb that can cure cancer for all we know.
There are absolutely, without question, critical foundational academic skills that are the bread and butter of a school district. But woven within that is also the ability for young people to be determinants of their own future, to be able to discover their own passions and interests. So we really feel like that is as much a part of our job as the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s, if you will.
In my opinion, for some reason, a lot of people who actually like farming, most of them were introverts. As a certain introvert myself, I always liked gardening because it was calming, and all you hear is just nature.
Our goal is always here at Monroe to try and create the most fulfilling, richest experience that kids can have when they come to school. This gives them the opportunity to really broaden their horizons.
Tulsa Principal Robert Kaiser supports developing social-emotional skills both in and outside the classroom. These are important life skills, like working with others, setting and achieving goals, and approaching challenges optimistically.
Finding something that a student really values helps not only with grades but also attendance and coming to school and being excited about the work that we do.
Milton discovered a passion for agriculture when his middle school partnered with Food on the Move, a nonprofit that uses urban gardening, hydroponics, and aquaponics to feed the community. Milton's new interest also provided a place to hone his leadership, cooperation, and communication skills.
Yeah, we actually just grab a specific panel, lift it, pull it back a tiny bit. These guys are also hard to cut sometimes because they have massive roots.
Yeah, they definitely do.
Weight them, bag them up, and then we give them to Catholic Charities or one of our events.
It's one thing to talk about theory, about what's going on in the classroom, but when you actually get to see it in action, that's what really makes the learning solidify in our students' minds.
My grades went up in science and PE. With hydroponics, you gotta mix the right amount of chemicals into the water to feed the plants.
At Monroe, after-school and summer programs like Food on the Move serve as ripe environments for social-emotional skills to be developed and strengthened.
For Milton, he was able to explore an opportunity that led him to this now internship where he's building skills and a resume that will only take him further in life.
Hey, whose name's on your paper? Go tell them good morning.
Developing these skills at an early age can benefit students in their careers and in life. Caroline Shaw works at Tulsa School District, where she helps ensure these opportunities begin to be available for even the youngest students.
These are really concrete skills that we can all build throughout our lifetime. Things like the ability to be able to get along with one another, to regulate your emotions, to empathize. One of the tools that all young people in Tulsa Public Schools, elementary school settings have is what we call a mood meter. It's a very simple color-coded grid that allows young people to reflect on how they're feeling in the moment and how they might be wanting to feel.
What do we feel if we're grouchy? What color are we in, or what zone? Do we have high energy or low energy? High energy, right? And are we pleasant or are we not so pleasant? Not pleasant. So these are some strategies that can help us move back down.
So it's not just that I'm frustrated or mad or I don't like you. It's I have tools to get to the place where I am my best self. Young people are learning all the time. Learning doesn't stop when they go home from school or when summer break starts. And as much as we know about these skills being really important for even the youngest learners to develop and us to foster, it becomes really even more critical in high school.
Hey, Buckin, how was your day?
Pretty good.
What'd you bring today?
Peppers, tomatoes, zucchini, and cucumber.
We'll surprise the rest of the children with your goodies. Come on. Thank you, love. I'm glad that you're still so active and that you actually accepted that job from the Guardian Club, because you know you weren't really very social.
Still not?
Still not, but look how much you can open up and help people now, you don't have no problem with doing it.
I can at least talk to people now.
You do, and I'm glad. I'm proud of you, because the older you get, I told you, you have to learn how to socialize and network, don't you?
For Milton, I think Food on the Move was an opportunity in which he was able to really explore his passion and really explore what he enjoyed doing, and it gave him a pathway.
He found a niche here where people appreciated what he had to say, and he had confidence in telling people about it. That's what the program's about.
These are really critical components of developing those productive citizens and members of our Tulsa community that know and care about one another and that are prepared to really engage and be active in their own success and in the success of our city overall.
Social emotional learning is important in school. We need to teach it to our parents so that they can use some of these same techniques and thoughts, processes at home. Emotions are an important part of being a human. That's often the thing that we kind of neglect over achievements and accomplishments. When we're able to recognize where we are emotionally, we're able to see our better selves and have better opportunities to do well.
McCarthy, the forever optimist who was telling us all weekend long, all day long yesterday even, that he is confident, that he never gives up, stepping aside, saying he will not run for speaker again. Guys, remember, all of this came about after McCarthy worked with Democrats to avoid a last-minute government shutdown on Saturday. That's what really led to this final vote to oust him.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I want to ask you about. Have we heard from Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz? What was his reaction to this vote? And explain to us also how the interim speaker was chosen, because it wasn't known exactly who that would be prior to this going down.
Exactly. Yeah, we have heard from Gaetz. And remember, this is something that McCarthy has long said was personal. Gaetz has denied that, of course. But Gaetz came out of this, and he came out of this victorious. It's not clear, though, what the next steps will be from Gaetz, who he will support for speaker, and so on. You're right. We do have an interim speaker that is Patrick McHenry of North Carolina. That was actually a secret list that every single speaker puts together when they get chosen. It doesn't matter if it's McCarthy or the many speakers prior. No one knew who was on this list, but the first person was Patrick McHenry, which is a very, very close ally of McCarthy. Take a listen, though, what Gaetz had to say right after this vote. Watch.
We heard Speaker McCarthy say that he wanted us to bring it on, so I guess we did. Kevin McCarthy couldn't keep his word. He made an agreement in January regarding the way Washington would work, and he violated that agreement. Kevin McCarthy should take a hint. After 15 ballots to become Speaker, after 8 months of a failed speakership, and after removal in this historic manner, I think we should move on and find somebody else.
So obviously McCarthy did take that hint. He said he will not run for speaker again. The question is, though, who will?
Yeah, and that begs the question, how does this work now? What's next for the House, the process for selecting a new speaker, and do we have any idea who is potentially in the running for the role?
Yeah, well, look, it's members of leadership, right? We have Tom Emmer, who is the whip, he's the vote counter of Republicans. You see him on your screen. Tom Cole, who's the rules chairman. Steve Scalise, who is by far the most popular choice after McCarthy. They thought for a second that he was going to be the one to take over as speaker back in January when McCarthy was going those 15 rounds. Elise Stefanik, Jim Jordan, who's, of course, the chair of the Judiciary Committee. Also some outside names like Kevin Hearn, who is the chair of the very conservative Republican Study Committee. A lot of people raising their hands now. Right now, the House is actually adjourned until Tuesday. They will come back next week. They will huddle in a room. McCarthy made it very clear that he doesn't want that same 15 ballot situation to happen again. They'll likely choose someone behind closed doors. And then on Wednesday, as soon as Wednesday, they might take to the floor for a full vote on that after they've chosen someone behind closed doors. So it's not likely we're going to see that dramatic process unfold like we did back in January. I think Republicans feel embarrassed by what happened yesterday, and they want to keep further embarrassment off of the block here and do something internally.
All right. Julie Sirkin, thank you so much.
And turning now overnight to breaking news out of Baltimore, where 5 people were wounded in a shooting at Morgan State University. The shooting prompted an hours-long shelter in place on campus as officials assessed whether they had an active shooter situation. Police say they do not have a suspect in custody. NBC News Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Delanian has the details.
The community here at Morgan State University is reeling after a mass shooting overnight that injured 5 people, including 4 students, though none fatally. Police still investigating and trying to hunt down the shooter. It's homecoming week here at Morgan State, which is supposed to be a time of celebration for students, but that was interrupted overnight when gunshots rang out around 9:25 here on campus. The details of the shooting are still unclear, but a Baltimore City councilman tweeted overnight that police told him they believe there were 3 separate shooters. After police and SWAT teams and federal agents responded here on campus, they locked the campus down for 2.5 hours until at midnight they gave the all clear, deciding that there was no more active shooter threat. Again, the nature and of this shooting is not entirely clear at this point. They have made no arrests. The investigation is continuing, and classes here at Morgan State University are canceled today as they decide how to go forward with homecoming week celebrations. Back to you.
All right, just heartbreaking. Kendall Anian, thank you so much.
Here in New York this morning, former President Donald Trump is expected to be back in court for a 3rd day as his $250 million civil fraud trial continues in Lower Manhattan. There was some speculation as to whether Trump would testify. Well, yesterday, speaking to reporters, he confirmed he is ready to take the stand.
How can we deliver one of the fuels of the future? Hydrogen could play a pivotal role in tomorrow's energy mix, but it's very expensive to transport. To ship it cost-effectively, we transformed blue hydrogen into blue ammonia. Discover how we delivered 40 tons of blue ammonia to Japan, catalyzing new pathways to cleaner fuels. Aramco, powered by How.
Mr. Trump, will you be testifying?
Yes, I will. At the appropriate time, I will be.
NBC's Lindsay Reiser joins us now from outside the court in Lower Manhattan. So, Lindsay, Trump was on the attack again yesterday, making comments and posting on social media. And because of that, now the judge has issued a gag order. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, some more police officers just arriving for the day. Media presence not as strong as it was on Monday, day 1, but we are expecting to see the former president again today. And yesterday, as you mentioned, the judge, after a lengthened break for lunch, really admonishing the courtroom over a Truth Social post, specifically, obviously, the defendant, the former president. He had posted during the 11 a.m. recess, about a 15-minute break yesterday, floating a conspiracy theory, essentially about one of the judge's staff members saying that she had some kind of personal relationship with Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, and the judge saying that any kind of disparaging comments about his staff is unacceptable, also saying consider this a gag order for all parties from posting about any members of my staff. So that sort of ended yesterday, but of course the president still at the end of the court hearing yesterday, essentially saying this was a good day. He saw his defense counsel cross-examine the witness, but we can talk more about that if you'd like as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. Lindsay, Trump's former accountant, Donald Bender. Tell us more about his testimony that we heard when he was on the stand yesterday.
Right, this is the former president's former primary accountant, and so the Attorney General's office is trying to do a couple of things with this witness. It's very dry, but it's important testimony. They're trying to introduce some documents, these financial statements that the AG's office says are overly inflated, and introduce them into evidence, but also introduce this accountant and say that he compiled these financial statements based on information that Trump and his team were giving him. And in cross-examination, Trump's defense attorney saying, you were the only accountant, not Alan Weisselberg, nobody else at the Trump organization. You were responsible for making sure this information was accurate. And Bender replied, no, it's the company who needs to provide me with accurate information. So that is the cross-examination that we heard the president allude to, saying this is a good day. Joan Savannah.
And so, Lindsay, we know Trump wasn't initially expected to be in court after day 2. Says he's going to return to court today. What are we watching out for with today's proceedings?
So we are expecting to hear more cross-examination of Bender, and then the AG's office will get a chance to redirect. But, you know, nothing is really to be expected as part of this, but I imagine that we will hear from the former president again. Basically, any break, he comes out and he sort of makes his case to the court of public opinion, to the cameras, and he says, you know, I should be on the campaign trail, but I have to be here. We should note he's not compelled to be here until he's called to testify, which he is on the witness list for the Attorney General's office. So that's not necessarily saying they guarantee that they'll call him. He says that he'll testify regardless, so the defense could call him if the AG's office doesn't.
But we can expect to hear some more rhetoric from the former president calling this a sham and a scam, saying that there were no victims. But Joe and Savannah, the AG's office does not have to prove there were any victims. They just have to prove there was fraud. And we have to keep in mind that the judge already ruled one of those causes, one of the claims brought by the AG's office. He has ruled in favor of the AG's office, saying that there is fraud. This is mostly about the other 6 claims, the other defendants, and now damages. Joe and Savannah.
All right, Lindsay Reiser in Lower Manhattan. Lindsay, thank you.
And in another legal battle, President Biden's son, Hunter Biden, pleaded not guilty to federal gun charges at his arraignment in Delaware yesterday. NBC News correspondent Ryan Nobles has the latest.
Hunter Biden back in a Delaware courthouse, the son of a sitting president now facing a criminal trial. Biden pleading not guilty to 3 felony gun charges for allegedly purchasing a handgun while being an active drug user and lying about it on a federal form. His attorney calling the charges the result of political pressure from President Trump and his MAGA allies to force the Justice Department to ignore the law and deviate from its policies in cases like this one. Special counsel David Weiss filing the charges after his controversial plea deal for the president's son, which would have resulted in no prison time, fell apart under a judge's scrutiny. 2 IRS whistleblowers testified that there was political interference in the DOJ investigation of Hunter Biden, which Weiss denies. If convicted, Hunter Biden facing a sentence of as much as 25 years behind bars, although he's unlikely to serve that much time. And his looming legal problems come as House Republicans step up their impeachment inquiry, hoping to tie Hunter Biden's foreign business dealings to his father.
Whether it was lunches, phone calls, White House meetings, or official foreign trips, Hunter Biden cashed in by arranging access to Joe Biden, the family brand.
A key GOP witness last week testifying there's not enough evidence for impeachment so far. The president has said he was not involved in his son's work. And what we saw play out Tuesday here in this courthouse could be just the beginning of the legal trouble for Hunter Biden. He's still facing tax charges that could come down by the end of the month in both California and Washington, D.C.
All right, Ryan, thank you so much.
Authorities in Washington are searching for 3 armed suspects who carjacked a member of Congress Monday night. It comes as the nation's capital faces a surge in violent crime. NBC News correspondent Tom Costello has that story.
It happened less than a mile from the Capitol. Texas Democrat Henry Cuellar carjacked as he arrived at his D.C. apartment.
I looked to the left, somebody had a gun. To the right, somebody had a gun. I had a third guy behind me. You got to stay calm.
Police recovered Cuellar's car. They're still looking for 3 masked suspects thought to be teenagers. It's been a year of violence in the nation's capital. 753 carjackings, double last year's number. Overall violent crime up 39%. 216 homicides, more than all of last year, and on track to be the deadliest in 20 years.
My son is dead. My son is dead. My son ain't do nothing to nobody.
I've been living here 31 years. This is the worst I've ever seen around here.
While violent crime is flat or down in New York, Los Angeles, and Philly, it's up 8% in Atlanta, up 27% in Chicago, up 28% in Baltimore. Washington's acting police chief says her department is understaffed and stretched beyond capacity.
The most pressing concern that I've heard from community members is the increase in robberies and carjackings and the fear that this creates.
Representative Cuellar isn't the first member of Congress to be a D.C. crime victim. Minnesota Representative Angie Craig was assaulted at her D.C. apartment. A staff member for Senator Rand Paul survived a stabbing last March. Congress and President Biden this year blocked a D.C. council plan that would have increased penalties for some crimes in Washington, but lowered them for others, including carjackings. Back to you.
Tom Costello, thank you.
Well, LaFonza Butler is now California's newest senator after being sworn into office by Vice President Harris. Butler now officially fills the seat of the late Senator Dianne Feinstein, who died last week at the age of 90. She was appointed to the seat by California Governor Gavin Newsom, and the appointment now gives Democrats a 51-49 majority in the Senate again. Butler is the 3rd Black woman to serve in the Senate and the first openly LGBTQ person to represent California in the chamber. She has not yet indicated whether she plans to run for a full term in office next year.
It's another day of unseasonably warm temperatures for parts of the country.
That is right. Like here in New York, already pretty warm this morning. Michelle Grossman's here with us. Hey, Michelle, good morning.
Hey there, guys. Yeah, it is so warm. We're about 10 to 25 degrees above what is typical for this time of year. So we sort of have a battle of the seasons going on. Back to the west, it's fall-like. We're looking at really cool temperatures. And then ahead of this cold front, we're looking at temperatures really warm. We broke records yesterday, the day before that, and the day before that. We're going to break records once again today. Here's that transition zone, that cold front, where we're going to see some strong to severe storms along that front. But first, with the temperatures, we're talking 80s once again in October, near 90 degrees in some spots. Buffalo, New York today, 87 degrees. That's 24 degrees above what is typical for this time of year. 80s in Detroit, Chicago, St. Louis, Cincinnati, near 90 degrees as well. 86 in Nashville. And we're warm still in the Northeast. 84 degrees in New York City today. That is 15 degrees above what we typically expect this time of year. We're going to do it again tomorrow, once again on Friday in some parts, but there's that cold front that's sweeping through, and it's going to sweep through that warm air. So by tomorrow, we're looking at Chicago, just 4 degrees above normal, 71 degrees. So that's a big drop off, but still in the 80s in Buffalo, 82, 79 in Washington, D.C., 7 degrees above average. And then take a look what happens. Look back to Minneapolis, a huge drop from what we saw yesterday. Temperatures into the 50s by Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 58 degrees, feeling like fall there. Same story in Cleveland. We drop off from 71 to 57 down to 53 on Sunday. And then we'll see that drop too in the Northeast by Sunday down to the low 60s. It's going to feel like fall, but we're going to bring some rain into the forecast there. So not the best fall foliage looking. So as we look towards the cold front, this is the dividing line from that warm air and cool air. We're looking at the chance for really strong to severe storms and also the chance for heavy rainfall. Where you see these dark colors, that's where we're expecting the heaviest rain. See some purple there? That could indicate some hail is expected. So we could see up to 2 inches in some spots. Severe storms erupting, especially in the southern plains. Downpours are likely. That could lead to flooding and also flash flooding. So low-lying areas, the rivers, the creeks, the streams could be swollen as well. Now, as we go throughout tomorrow, we're looking at a line of showers and storms tracking to the east. This is a cold front we've been watching all week long, and it's taking its time getting here, but it will finally get to the northeast. So by tomorrow, we're looking at the Great Lakes into the Ohio Valley, portions of the Mississippi Valley down to the Gulf Coast states. And we're looking at the greatest chance from Michigan and Mississippi for some strong storms. So we'll look at that tomorrow. But for this afternoon, a big area that could see some strong to severe storms, especially where you see this yellow area. That includes Dallas. It includes Oklahoma City, also Lubbock down to Midland. And again, baseball-sized hail in some spots. That's going to cause a lot of damage. 10 million people at risk in this area. Winds gusting up to 75 miles per hour. Keep in mind, hurricane force speed, Category 1 is 74 miles per hour. Could see a tornado or two. Not a whole lot. That's not the biggest threat, but still could see a few tornadoes. The biggest story here will be that rainfall. Lots of rain expected. We could see 2 to 3 inches per hour in some spots. That's going to lead to flash flooding. This is always dangerous, especially with the multiple rounds of training storms over the same area. Sort of that sit and spin where it drops that water in the same spot. So for the rest of the country, we're looking good in the west, nice and quiet, although cooler, as I mentioned, record warmth in the east. It will be smoky all the way down to portions of Florida. That is from the Canadian wildfire. So that high pressure kind of pumps it down to portions of the southeast and could see some Gulf Coast showers as well. Now, as we look towards the weekend, there's that cold front, clear to see where it is on the map, that stripe of green from portions of the Northeast into the Tennessee Valley, the Gulf Coast states. That's where we could see the rain there. Still mild out ahead of that. And then behind that front, much, much cooler. West is best. We're looking at lots of sunshine, temperatures comfortable. I went to CB East, and they always said West is best, so it hurts when I say that. But anyway, and then we look towards Saturday, heavy rain in portions of New England. That is from Philippe. I'll show you that track in just a minute. But mild sunshine throughout the middle of the country, an autumn breeze in the southeast, the Tennessee Valley on Sunday, cool and damp. And then we'll talk about Philippe real quick because we're still looking at a tropical storm, expecting to be a tropical storm as it reaches the New England coast by Saturday and Sunday. And we could see some drenching rains there as well.
I'm already seeing that coming up in my forecast.
I know.
Only nice for a little.
We're actually going to start a coastal battle between the West Coast and the East Coast here, sparked by Michelle Grossman.
I love y'all's graphics. West is best. And then just
best.
Nice day.
Yeah.
Michelle, thank you. All right, much more to come here on Morning News Now. Later this hour, unexpected side effects, the new research that shows the impact discrimination could have on your physical health.
First, though, after the break, new details about that remarkable rescue of a 9-year-old girl, what we're learning about the hours before she was found, plus the suspect now under arrest accused of her kidnapping. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Want the fastest charge for your USB-C iPhone? Introducing Anchor Nano. the fastest charge for your USB-C iPhone. Search Anchor USB-C charger on Amazon now.
We're back now with new details about that remarkable rescue of a 9-year-old girl. Police say that she was abducted from her family while riding her bike. NBC News correspondent Kathy Park shows us how investigators were able to track down the suspect, who's now charged with kidnapping.
9-year-old Charlotte Senna back with loved ones after vanishing while riding her bike at an upstate New York park. In a statement, the family writing, "We are thrilled that she is home, and we understand that the outcome is not what every family gets." The major break coming after a 2-day-long search when authorities tracked down 46-year-old Craig Nelson Ross Jr. after a ransom note was left at Charlotte's home. The intent? To get money, according to the arraignment memo.
A fingerprint was found that matched what was found on the ransom note.
Authorities say that critical clue was linked to a 1999 DWI and allowed SWAT teams to move in on the suspect's camper, roughly 20 miles from where Charlotte was last seen.
After some resistance, the suspect was taken into custody, and immediately the little girl was found in a cabinet, cupboard. She was rescued, and she knew she was being rescued. She knew that she was in safe hands.
Was the suspect known to the family?
It has not been determined that the suspect was known to the family.
The suspect was arraigned on a charge of first-degree kidnapping. The governor of New York saying they're still looking into the possibility of connections to other cases. NBC News attempted to contact the suspect's attorney, but we haven't heard back.
We're all just like so surprised and shocked that happened just a little ago.
In the neighborhood where officials say Charlotte was found alive and unharmed, crews seen gathering evidence and residents grateful for some closure after days on alert. And the governor of New York calling this an active investigation. The suspect is currently being held at the Saratoga County Jail behind me without bail. Next court appearance is set for October 17th. Back to you.
All right, Kathy Park, thank you.
Let's get you international headlines now, starting in Italy, where several people are dead after a tour bus crash near Venice.
NBC's Claudio Lavanga joins us from Rome with that and other world headlines. Claudio, good morning.
Good morning, guys. That's right. At least 21 people died and 15 others at least were injured after a bus plunged almost 50 feet off a flyover near Venice. Now the bus filled with foreign tourists returning to their camping site after a visit to the lagoon suddenly fell off the flyover and crashed near railway tracks below. Authorities say Ukrainian and German nationals were among the dead and called the scene apocalyptic. The cause of the accident is still unknown. Now let's go to Brazil now, where more than 100 dolphins have died since last week. The carcasses of the dolphins were found beached on Tefe Lake in the Amazon region. Experts say the likely cause of the deaths is the rise in water temperature, which killed thousands of fish dolphins feed on. The Amazonas governor declared a state of emergency due to a prolonged drought, which caused water temperatures to rise above 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Let's end this tour of the world in Japan, where one of the most popular shrines is no longer free to visit. The bright orange Itsukushima shrine that appears floating on a lake is one of the most recognizable and photographed attractions in Japan. But local authorities have long struggled with over-tourism. That's why on Sunday they introduced a tourist tax to visit the shrine. But don't worry, the tax is only 100 yen. That's just 67 cents. Back to you, Joe, Savannah.
Something we're seeing all over the planet right now, those little taxes and things. All right.
Interesting. Claudio, thank you so much.
Yeah. Coming up, a major move that could impact millions of Americans. When we come back, what we're learning about a new price negotiation deal involving top drug makers and Medicare.
And carb lovers rejoice. Why researchers now say the way to lose weight doesn't necessarily mean cutting out your favorite foods. We will explain this next. Look at the yay carbs. Next on Morning News Now.
Yay carbs.
We are back now with a development that could have a major impact on the health and wallets of millions of Americans.
The Biden administration announced Tuesday that drug manufacturers have agreed to participate in new price negotiations with Medicare.
For more on this, we are joined by NBC News senior White House reporter Peter Nicholas. Peter, it's great to have you on with us. So what drugs are we talking about here, and what have we heard from the White House about the negotiations?
Well, we're talking about drugs that would treat diseases like, heart disease, arthritis. There are blood thinners on this list. And the White House is very pleased with this. This was a result of passage of the Inflation Reduction Act last year, gave the government, Medicare, the right, the authority, the power to negotiate with drug companies to reduce drug prices. So President Biden is arguing this is a win for everyday consumers, for senior citizens. And the contrast with House Republicans and the chaos that we saw last night, I think, is pretty stark. The White House is pretty happy about that as well.
So, many of the pharma companies, Peter, are in the process of suing the government, saying that forcing them to negotiate like this, that it's unconstitutional, that the process will threaten future innovation, future profits. So was this just a case of them being forced to the bargaining table? I mean, how are they reacting to all this?
Well, yes, I think they were felt compelled to negotiate. They saw this train coming, no way to avoid it. So there'll be negotiations that will proceed this year and next year. Any price reductions are probably not going to go into effect until 2026, so maybe a few years before Americans see real-world benefits from this. But the court challenges will proceed. But manufacturers, I think, understood which direction this was going, and wanted to get on board and see if they can cut the best deal possible for themselves.
So, Peter, ultimately, given that, as you're discussing, kind of some of this fighting is still going on over the details here, does this mean that these prices, the lowering of them, is potentially up in the air still?
Yes, I think so. We don't know exactly where this will land. I mean, there's a negotiation that's proceeding, but we will see some real-world benefits by 2026, it sounds like. But it'll be up to the two sides to see what where the prices will ultimately land.
Peter Nicholas, thank you very much. Important info for all of us.
Let's keep the health news going with our weekly medical checkup. This week, how living in a walkable neighborhood could cut your risk for some cancers.
Plus, the surprising impacts of discrimination on your health and how it could also impact what you eat.
NBC News medical contributor Dr. Kavita Patel joins us to discuss some of these health headlines you may have missed. Dr. Patel, good to have you with us. So let's start with this new research out of UCLA, which finds a link between experiencing discrimination and increased health risks. Tell us more about the relationship here.
Yeah, Joe, Savannah, we've got a great set of studies. The first one is the most interesting I've seen in a long time, which really does kind of map out literally how your emotions and responses in your emotions can affect your diet and what you eat. UCLA researchers looked at over 100 patients and gave them some standardized responses to discrimination questions, even questions as simple as, do you feel like you were treated less than you deserve to be treated today? So very wide-ranging questions. Divided a group into people who experienced discrimination and those who did not experience as much discrimination. People who experienced more discrimination, particularly if they were lower socioeconomic status, lower income, actually had physical changes to their brain and changes in their chemistry in their blood, as well as their fecal matter, which all signal kind of an important brain-gut connection that leads to actually eating more sweet and processed foods, which translates to more weight. So this is an important, the doctor's orders here are pretty important. Listen to your brain-gut crosstalk. We've all thought that like our brain and our gut are connected. Indeed, they are. And the responses that we're getting from outside factors can play a really important part in that. And I think an even more important doctor order is kind of feel-good foods might feel good in that moment, but they don't help because they can really feed that cycle that really kind of wires your brain and your gut.
Wow, interesting. All right, Dr. Patel, another new one. Like you said, we've got a lot of good studies today.
Yeah.
Shows that avoiding weight gain in middle age might not be as hard as we think. A minute ago.
Oh, I love it. I am here for it.
Yeah, we had yay carbs written across the bottom of the screen, which I'm not exactly sure is the headline here, but this is out of Harvard. Maybe switching carbs. Tell us about this.
It is yay carbs, yay good carbs. So we looked at, this is one of those amazing studies we've been able to do by looking at a population, 136,000 men and women over 24 years. And they looked for associations and patterns. And what they found, here's kind of to take it to the bottom line. They found that when people actually had better carbs, and I'm talking fruits and vegetables, and then kind of what we would call whole grain carbohydrates. We talked about these before. What are whole grains? Rice is a whole grain, but you need to have the whole grain of the rice and the oats and the farro and the quinoa and all those starchy, kind of those really good carbs that are not as refined. When you did that, even in middle age, as people get older, men and women, they had about a 6.6 pound lesser weight than people who had more sugar and more of those refined carbs. The doctor's orders here, I tell all my patients, including myself, start with small changes. Don't try to make dramatic swaps. If you drink sodas, swap out those sodas for water, put in some fruits, and then it's quality over quantity. So don't try to do everything, but just make sure that the quality swap. But yay carbs is the bottom line.
Just like quiet, like, yay carbs.
I know, but the carb we were showing, as we said it, by the way, was a massive pizza being made, which I don't think is the take-home.
Maybe here, put on that piece of pizza, put a little bit of broccoli. There you go.
Oh my gosh.
And then, or think about a cauliflower crust. Or think about something different. You can still have that pizza.
Is really good, actually.
I agree. I'm in the cauliflower stuff now. All right, one more thing, Dr. Patel. So every step you take could be one step farther away from cancer. A new study from Columbia and New York University researchers found women living in walkable neighborhoods have lower rates of cancer. Tell us more about this.
Yeah.
Right. We know, first, it starts with a great body of research where we know that obesity can be linked to higher cancer risk. So we know that as a fact from decades of studies. Now we're looking at studies where we're talking about what can you do to modify those behaviors. So things like walkable cities. So they looked at kind of every city in the country and looked at how walkable those cities are. That's things like sidewalks, parks, just having a place outside of your home to be able to walk. Not high intensity jogging or cardio, just walking. They found that people living in the top quartile, the top 25% of the country's walkable cities, actually had a 26% lower association with these obesity-related cancers. So the doctor's orders here, I know it's not that easy to just move, but the doctor's orders here are to really think about just one step at a time. Taking that one step today, even in 5 minutes, can help with that bottom line. And then even if you do not live immediately in a walkable community, your community can get a prescription as in a community to talk about ways to make it more walkable. You've seen people converting malls and other areas into walkable fields. Those are all things. The High Line in New York City is a great example of that. It's possible to do this in your community, and it's all about your health.
Makes a difference. All right, Dr. Kavita Patel, thank you for all your input this morning. We appreciate it.
Great roundup and great to see you. Thank you. Coming up, it's been 27 years since Tupac Shakur was shot and killed. Now the man charged with murdering the rapper is expected in court for the first time.
When we come back, what we know about the suspect and the key evidence that led to his arrest nearly 3 decades later. This is Morning News Now.
You make your kingdom, and your kingdom makes you. Help protect your health and finances with Medicare Solutions from the Mutual of Omaha family of companies.
We're back now with financial headlines. Ford has made a new offer in a bid to end that UAW strike.
Yeah, could be big news. CNBC's Savannah Hanal joins us with that and some other headlines this morning. Hey, Savannah, good morning.
Good morning, Savannah. Good morning, Joe. Yeah, Ford says it's made a new comprehensive contract offer in a bid to resolve the targeted strike by the UAW that's now in its 3rd week. Ford says the new offer boosts wages for temporary workers, increases 401k contributions, and shrinks the amount of time workers need to get to the top wage rate. The union has declined comment on the offer. Both Ford and General Motors have furloughed more workers this week at plants they say are impacted by the strike. Spotify is making more than 150,000 audiobooks available to premium subscribers. They'll be offered first to customers in the UK and Australia and in the US later this year. Spotify will offer 15 hours of listening per month with the option to buy an extra 10 hours if needed. The company making the announcement as it tries to expand into other areas of audio and turn a profit. And Barbie has a new neighbor, Stevie Nicks. Mattel unveiling the latest doll in its music collector series earlier this week. The Stevie Nicks doll is inspired by her look on the cover of Fleetwood Mac's album Rumors, with a long black dress with draped sleeves and black shoes. But good luck trying to get your hands on this collector's item. The Stevie Nicks Barbie went on sale on Monday, and it was sold out in less than 24 hours.
Look at her tiny tambourine.
I was just thinking, I love the tambourine.
Yeah, it's so cute. And it really does look like her.
It's great.
That's awesome. All right, Savannah, thank you so much.
Today, the man charged with the murder of rapper Tupac Shakur is set to be arraigned in a Nevada courtroom.
On Friday, Las Vegas police announced the arrest of Dwayne Davis. While investigators do not believe Davis was the trigger man, he has long admitted he was inside the gunman's car when Shakur was shot and killed on the Las Vegas Strip 27 years ago. For more, we are joined by retired New York Police Department Detective Derek Parker. He did not work on this case, but he's here to help us just analyze this investigation. We appreciate you being here with us. Good morning. So this has been a very high-profile case, of course, almost 3 decades. So as a former detective, we're hoping that you can sort of walk us through the process of finding new evidence and why this is happening now so many years after a crime.
Okay, well, the police department in Las Vegas now has, they had a grand jury that was convened, and they indicted Keefe D for one of the participants in the murder of Tupac Shakur. He was basically in the car with 3 other individuals at the time, and what happened was that he went on social media proclaiming that he was one of the individuals that was in the car that was conspiring to commit the murder, and he sort of implicated himself. The police department took a lot of time and patience to put this together. It's been a long time, but right now they got a lot of new evidence that they presented to the grand jury. The grand jury found the true indictment, and now we are here with the arrest of him. He gets arraigned today, as a matter of fact, Keefe D, in the murder of Tupac.
Yeah, and we should note that's the nickname Davis has for our viewers who aren't familiar. You know, he's spoken publicly about his involvement in Tupac's murder since 2018, even appearing to implicate himself in his own memoir. He wasn't shy about talking about himself. So a lot of people are wondering, why did it then take so long to make this arrest?
Well, you got to understand something, too. When this shooting happened, I was out in Las Vegas with the detectives back in '96. This was after the homicide. We were trying to gather evidence with the organized crime unit out there to see if we can unearth evidence to find out any new leads or any kind of information that would help. But in this case, it's hard because a lot of the people involved, the witnesses or the people that were involved in the shooting, such as Suge Knight and maybe the entourage, they weren't very cooperative with the Las Vegas Police Department. And at that time, the Las Vegas Police Department didn't know a lot about the hip-hop music industry. I here in New York, myself, they had me as the hip-hop cop. I was back in '96 and '97. I traveled to Vegas and I traveled to Los Angeles and investigated those murders with other detectives. So I know a little bit more about the hip-hop industry than most law enforcement officers do. The reason it took so long again was because you had to be patient. And then Keefe D implicating himself and going on the news outlets saying that he did it just fueled the fire, and it helped them go after him and to arrest him in this case.
So now, with Davis in custody, and then authorities say the other men in the car that night are all dead at this point, is the investigation over? I mean, what does that mean? Where do things go from here?
No, well, right now, he's being charged with the murder of Tupac Shakur. The other 3 individuals are deceased, so you can't do anything with that. While they have him in custody, they're going to try to unearth some new evidence and try to find out a lot more things, because this is going to either go to a trial or he'll take a plea. So I'm sure he's going to retain counsel. Counsel's going to guide him as to how he's going to deal with this. But this is going to be interesting right now, because I think the police department out in Las Vegas has gathered some other things that they're going to present soon that may put him in with this murder investigation.
Retired New York Police Department Detective Derek Parker, we really appreciate you here with us to analyze this. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Coming up, it's an LA institution built by immigrants. Up next in this Hispanic Heritage Month, we're going to take you inside a beloved Cuban bakery with a fan base that stretches far beyond city lines.
Plus, it turns out winning the lotto isn't just about luck. We are going to talk to a British professor who says he has the formula that guarantees you a winning ticket, at least of sorts. You're watching Morning News Now.
Welcome back. Never mind the World Series or the WNBA playoffs. We have an update on the contest that everyone wants to know about, Fat Bear Week. This is a tournament-style bracket where the public votes on their favorite brown bear from Katmai National Park in Alaska as the animals bulk up ahead of their winter hibernation. So this year's 12 furry finalists include bear number 128, that's Grazer. Number 151 is Walker. 480 is Otis. And number 32, Chunk. Voting starts today at noon Eastern Time at, yes, this is a website, fatbearweek.org.
And Joe, if you remember, this was so popular, there was even a cheating controversy around this last year, that people were stuffing the digital ballot box for their favorite bear. It's awesome.
I guess you could just put them on a scale, but that sounds dangerous.
I think we're going to have to kind of follow it, so we'll let you know who comes out.
That bear week.
All right, thanks, Joe. Well, as we celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month, there's a beloved family business in Los Angeles that started like so many with immigrants seeking a better life. NBC News Now anchor Gotti Schwartz brings you the story of an LA institution that satisfies the sweet tooth of millions.
It's not your normal business. I mean, it's different. And it's just something unique that we don't even know how to explain it.
Porto's Bakery has been a Los Angeles institution for nearly 50 years. It's owned by the Porto family, Margarita, Raul Jr., and Betty Porto, who carry a legacy that began on an island during a very different time.
This was something that was born in Cuba, right? How did this start?
I remember being a little girl and my mom would make cakes for us just for fun, So when Castro comes to power and neither one of them has a job, my dad goes to a labor camp away from the home. My mom has to kind of reinvent herself.
In the midst of 1960s communist Cuba, to make ends meet, their mother Rosa began the underground business of baking right in the family's kitchen.
So it really neighbors and friends knew that she knew how to make cakes, and that's how she started. It wasn't something that she was planning to do, but she just kind of had to jump into it in order to survive.
In Cuba, making cakes and selling them, that was dangerous, right?
It was illegal because all private property and private business were closed down. And so if you would have been caught, back in those days, it was 25 years in jail.
Then came a hope of a different life via the freedom flights from Cuba to Miami. So one day in 1971, Rosa and her husband Raul Sr. gathered their 3 children with nothing but the clothing on their backs and boarded a plane and left Cuba forever.
Do you remember the day that you left?
I remember my best friend, the bus was leaving and she chased, waving at me. That's what I remember.
And when we came into the airport, there was maybe 100 people that were leaving on the same flight to Miami. So I could feel the tension in the room as a kid. I'll never forget that.
The family settled in California, and within a few years, Rosa opened the first Porto's Bakery, with the whole family pitching in.
We were just trying to have one shop, be successful, and survive, and be able to buy a house one day.
Porto's allure usually starts with a craving for their famous potato balls or guava cheese strudels, and that quickly gives way to their countless cakes, pastries, empanadas, Cuban sandwiches, and specialties. One store led to more, and soon Rosa had started what she hoped would be a family empire.
She wanted us to go to school, to get an education. She didn't realize it until we graduated, and then we decided to start on board. Then she became the opposite. She would tell the children, okay, I built this for you. When are you coming in?
We all enjoyed something in the business, and we liked working alongside them. And then after we graduated from college, we all decided, why should I go anywhere else? And this is something that is great.
The siblings took over the business, and Rosa Porto retired in 2003. Today, with 6 locations in Southern California, the next generation of Portos are already in the mix. Raul's son, Adrian, is a chef.
Butter, ham, pork, 3 pickles, no more, no less. I've been told if it's not 3 pickles, it's not a Cuban sandwich. Got it.
Margarita's son, Diego, is also a chef and a master of all things pastry.
My grandmother was like another mother. I see her and everything. I think about her every day. There you go. Not bad.
You're giving me a good feeling.
We tell the stories that matter most.
You're giving me a good feeling. Yes, you do.
Mine doesn't look like yours.
No, it's okay. It takes practice.
If you had to sum it up, what is the magic?
The magic is the fact that people can taste the love that we put into everything we do.
Oh, what an amazing story. And I know Joe loves this. He's actually been there. Thanks to Gotti Schwartz for that report. Rosa Porto passed away in 2019, but until the very end, she was still asking how the stores were doing, what was selling. Raul Sr., by the way, is now 91 years old, and great news. Everybody can now have porters at home with a make and bake delivery service.
It was a staple when I worked in LA in the LA Bureau.
Yeah.
If there's anything we were celebrating, pastries, especially those guava ones,
Oh my gosh,
would be
I
there.
love
And the
guava.
lines, when you drove by early in the day, the lines were always out the door.
Oh my
so.
gosh, what an incredible story behind the
Exactly.
business.
So glad to see that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, fabulous.
Finally, this hour, tonight's Powerball drawing is actually the third biggest ever, worth an estimated $1.2 billion. Your chances of winning that prize, as always, just 1 in 292 million.
But what if there was a way to guarantee a winning ticket, at least of sorts? Well, over in the UK, a pair of math professors have come up with a formula that they say does just that.
Dr. David Cushing is a research associate in the mathematics department at the University of Manchester in the UK. Joins us now to explain. Good to have you with us, Dr. Cushing. So you and your research partner have come up with a formula that I guess guarantees buying a winning ticket in the UK lottery. So explain this, the math behind it, and how many tickets you actually have to buy to make this happen.
So good morning and thanks for having me on. So as you said, this works for the UK National Lottery, which is different to the Powerball. There's 59 numbers, 1 to 59. You pick 6 on your ticket and there's no Powerball number. Now there's 45 million different ways to fill out the tickets. So you would have to buy all of these to win the jackpot. However, you can win a prize by matching just 2 numbers. And together with my colleague, we found 27 tickets that if you put these on, no matter what draw comes out, you will guarantee at least 1 ticket matches at least 2 numbers. But unfortunately, it will not guarantee a profit because you might have 26 of these 27 tickets lose.
Okay, I guess that's how much you win.
You spend too much. Right. Okay. Let's see, though. I know you said, okay, thank you, because that was helpful to hear, not about the Powerball, that kind of thing. But can this apply to American lotteries, you know, where there is that special ball and tickets are $2 a piece? Using this formula, you think you could win your money back here?
Well, I had a look at the Powerball, and unfortunately, there's no known formula where you just plug in your specific lottery. You have to solve it on a case-by-case basis. And the smallest prize on the Powerball is from just matching the Powerball. So there's 26 balls, so you could just put on 26 tickets, and you would guarantee winning. It gets a bit harder if you remove the Powerball. So the smallest prize without the Powerball would be matching 3 numbers, and it's currently unknown how many tickets you would need for that. The best, it's somewhere between 848 and 1,485. So you would lose a lot of money trying this.
You're like, I'm a winner who just lost more than $1,000.
Yeah.
What inspired you to dig into this? And my understanding is you used an early form of AI that dates back like 50 years?
So cool.
Yes. So one of the reasons why we took this problem is we thought it'd be very attackable with this language called Prolog, which is a 50-year-old language which is mainly known for AI and language processing. And the sort of AI it uses was from the very early sort of AI. We give it something that we ask, is this true? It has a list of things it knows to be true, and it combines these statements in a logical way to rule things out. And in this case, it tells us this cannot be done in 26 tickets. So one of the other reasons we wrote this paper is we're trying to promote the use of Prolog in pure mathematics.
Wow, very cool.
I guess I'm going to go buy 292 million lottery tickets tonight, and then we'll see how it goes. We'll hope for it. All right.
I kind of like the idea of just the 26 with the Powerball, at least.
Exactly. All right. Dr. David Cushing, very fascinating stuff. Thanks for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
It really is. Thanks.
That does it for this hour of Morning News Now.
But the news continues right now. Good morning. Thanks for joining us this Wednesday. I'm Savannah Sellers.
I'm Joe Fryer. Right now on Morning News Now, a House divided, an unprecedented ouster on Capitol Hill as a small group of far-right Republicans essentially fire House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. We've got team coverage on what comes next after McCarthy announces he won't run for Speaker again. Tragedy strikes Baltimore, a city anxious and uncertain after an overnight shooting at Maryland's Morgan State University. 5 people were wounded, 4 of them students. Their conditions this morning as police search for answers. Also this morning, Cheat GPT. Later in the hour, we'll head back to school. We're going to take a closer look at how artificial intelligence is impacting the college admissions process. Is it plagiarism to use one of those popular programs on your application? And holding on to hope, fighting for mental health resources on college campuses for the student athletes who need it most. Bring us that conversation coming up live at the end of the hour. Looking forward to that one. It's an important topic for so many.
Turned a tragedy that happened within their family into something really important for so many students across the country.
Looking forward to that. We're going to begin this hour with the first in U.S. history. A sitting Speaker of the House forced out of the speakership in the middle of a term. 8
House Republicans joined Democrats in voting Kevin McCarthy out of this leadership role. The vote took place after Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz filed a motion earlier this week to vacate the Speaker's seat in response to McCarthy's deal to avert a government shutdown. House Republicans won't begin to nominate McCarthy's replacement until next Wednesday, leaving the House of Representatives really in limbo. NBC News senior Capitol Hill correspondent Garrett Haake has the latest.
Hi, Phil Swift here. This is Flex Super Glue. Just one single drop virtually welds itself to the surface and can easily lift over 3 tons. Get the new Flex Super Glue because it works.
Hey, good morning. This was an historic and a stunning moment on the House floor. The first time in the history of the Republic that a speaker has ever been voted out of the job on the House floor. Now, Kevin McCarthy says he won't seek the speakership again, and he's blaming Democrats and those Republican hardliners for his fall. Today, the Republican-led House in chaos, with no permanent speaker and no clear frontrunner for the job.
The office of Speaker of the House of the United States House of Representatives is hereby declared vacant.
Now former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy ousted by a group of 8 far-right rebels, joined by all Democrats.
If I lose my job over doing what I truly believe was right, I'm very at peace with it.
McCarthy saying he won't run for Speaker again, pinning blame on the opposition party and on his GOP opponents, led by Florida conservative firebrand Matt Gaetz.
You all know Matt Gaetz. You know it was personal. I haven't heard him say one true thing yet.
Speaker McCarthy's time is over. I have no personal animus to him. I hope he finds fruitful pastures.
In January, Gaetz was the last GOP holdout to oppose making McCarthy Speaker, ultimately voting present on the 15th ballot. To placate critics, McCarthy made key concessions, including lowering the number of votes required to start the process to oust a speaker to just 1. Last week, after McCarthy relied on Democrats to temporarily avoid a government shutdown, Gaetz vowed to try to remove him. McCarthy's response, bring it on.
We heard Speaker McCarthy say that he wanted us to bring it on, so I guess we did.
House Democrats vowing to stay out of the GOP civil war made no effort to bail out McCarthy. The bottom line here is that just nobody trusts Kevin McCarthy.
Nobody trusts Kevin McCarthy. Nobody trusts Kevin McCarthy. And why should we?
A long line of McCarthy allies denouncing the revolt. Even former President Trump saying on social media, why is it that Republicans are always fighting among themselves? And Congress is headed home for the week without a clear leader for the majority party, in chaos brought about by 8 of its members. Until the House votes on a new speaker, North Carolina Republican Patrick McHenry will serve in an interim role. And in one of his first acts last night, he ordered former Speaker Nancy Pelosi to vacate the office space she had been using in the Capitol, according to Pelosi. The former speaker had been in San Francisco with the family of the late Senator Feinstein and missed yesterday's vote.
All right, Garrett, thank you so much.
For more on this, we are joined by NBC News senior national politics reporter Jonathan Allen. John, good to have you with us. So let's start with just the unprecedented nature of yesterday's vote. Tensions have been brewing among House Republicans long before that deal was reached to avoid a government shutdown. You could say they've been brewing since January. Matt Gaetz was the last GOP holdout opposed to making McCarthy Speaker in the first place. But how did we get to this point?
I think the way that we got to this point is that there is a series of Republicans, a set of Republicans in the House of Representatives that don't really believe, very much in majority rule, that want to be able to exert as much power as possible. This is not the first time we've seen a push for this concept of motion to vacate the chair. Mark Meadows, then a congressman from North Carolina, later the chief of staff to Donald Trump, had tried to do this with John Boehner back in 2015. So this has been sitting there for a while. This power, it's as Garrett pointed out in his package, that McCarthy agreed to allow one member to bring it up. But at the end of the day, there are a handful of Republican members that are super angry that they are not able to dictate policy, that they're not able to do more to stop the government from operating, that they're not able to do more to put the government into default. And in this case, they figured out a way to exact some revenge on what they believe was the proximate cause, Kevin McCarthy, and Democrats went along with them, basically saying, to hell with McCarthy, despite his working with Democrats, or at least voting with Democrats to keep the government open and to avoid a default.
And let's talk about now what's going on. I mean, the person who's currently filling in as interim speaker, Patrick McHenry, we did not know that that's who would be stepping up. He was put on the secret list that McCarthy provided to the clerk in the event of a vacancy, something that is a longstanding tradition. What should we know about this role for him?
It makes me feel old, Savannah. Patrick McHenry, when he was first elected in 2004, was the first member of Congress younger than me. That is a long time ago, almost 20 years now. And McHenry is somebody who's very well trusted by most of the Republicans. It's possible, of course, that he can become the elected speaker at the end of this process. But he's somebody who came in as a rabble-rouser when he first arrived in Congress. Not exactly a Matt Gaetz type, but somebody who was kind of reviled, certainly by the other side and even by a lot of people in his own party. Over time, he's become a much more serious legislator, to the point that when Kevin McCarthy was put in the position of providing a list of potential emergency successors to the clerk of the House, Patrick McHenry was at the top of that list.
So let's talk about this process for nominating a new speaker next week. What could this look like? Could Republicans take this week, get things in order, come out and make this an easy, seamless process, or could it just be utter chaos again next week?
Oh, the laugh already.
Joe, I love your optimism.
I'm just presenting the two possibilities here.
It's going to look like a volcano erupting into a hurricane in the middle of an earthquake. I mean, this is...
Wow, great.
I mean, could it be fairly easy? I guess, but between now and then, it's going to be very, very ugly.
All right.
There you go.
John, with all the natural disasters.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Hope,
Appreciate
John.
it.
Yeah, thanks. Good to see you. The search is underway for the shooter or shooters responsible for the attack on Morgan State University last night. 5 people were injured during the shooting, 4 of those victims being students at the school. City officials are now calling for a nationwide reform as Baltimore remains on edge. NBC News Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Delanian joins us now with the very latest this morning. Hi, Ken. Good morning.
Let me take a breather and chat a bit about something that's become like my right hand. It's always there, and I use it every single day, rain or shine. It's Notion, an absolute godsend of a platform. It helps me manage the wild jungle that my work often turns into. What you might not know is that they launched a brand new projects feature that allows you to manage, track, and delegate with the power of AI. Here you can add different tasks, and the cool thing about this is that the AI is built in at an even deeper level than it was up until now. So right here, I'll create a new task, and we'll set it to in progress. I'll assign different people that will work on this and set a deadline. This one is rather low priority, and by clicking this button, you will get an AI summary right away. Everybody has access to the same thing, and we can organize everything in one place. We get all the views and many more features. It's really powerful. So whether you're a wordsmith, a businessman, a tech enthusiast, or a content creator like me, Notion's got your back. Still on the fence? Well, why not give Notion a free try? You might just find out it's a total game changer, just like I did for my team.
Good morning, Savannah. It's homecoming week here at Morgan State University, and that's supposed to be a time for celebration for students, but that was interrupted last night by a terrifying shooting that brought police and SWAT teams to campus.
This morning, the entire city of Baltimore's heart aches for the Morgan community.
In Maryland this morning, a community reeling and students wounded, but alive, and police still searching for a suspect. After a mass shooting during Morgan State University's homecoming week, injured 5 people, including 4 students between the ages of 18 and 22. Police say the victims were taken to a hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. Officers responding to gunshots on campus overnight.
They heard discharge and responded to the scene located
multiple victims, multiple windows shattered, and made our officers believe possibly we had an active shooter.
The campus of the historically black university put on lockdown for the next 2.5 hours.
We saw all the police cars and the ambulance, and then we saw the SWAT team running.
The panic shortly after the homecoming coronation of Miss and Mr. Morgan State University.
This was an unbelievably beautiful event this evening.
This is the third year in a row that a shooting incident has marred Morgan State's homecoming celebrations. And it follows other shootings on college campuses this year, including at the University of North Carolina this summer, where a graduate student was charged with killing a faculty member. Baltimore's mayor with a national message overnight.
We have to stop saying not one more. We need action now. When will the sanctity of American lives and the sanctity of American college students and students to get their education outweigh the sanctity of American guns?
Now, the details of this shooting remain unclear, but a Baltimore city councilman tweeted overnight that police told him they believe there may have been 3 shooters. With classes canceled here at Morgan State University, though, people are just glad that the victims survived.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Ken Delanian, thank you very much.
Here in New York, former President Donald Trump is expected to be back in court this morning for a third day as his $250 million civil fraud trial continues in Lower Manhattan. Trump has been making incendiary remarks about the trial outside the courtroom and on social media. Now the judge has issued a warning about those comments. NBC News senior legal correspondent Laura Jarrett reports.
Hey there, with the financial stakes of this trial so high, there are bound to be some heated days in court, but so far, it's what's happening outside of the courtroom that's causing more drama.
In a Manhattan courtroom, Donald Trump's financial statements back on trial this morning. But it's Mr. Trump's increasingly inflammatory comments and social media posts outside of court that's landing him in hot water with the judge, who will decide the penalty for his namesake company, found liable of engaging in brazen financial fraud.
This trial is a rigged trial. It's a fraudulent trial. Frankly, you saw what was just put out about Schumer and the principal clerk. That is disgraceful.
What was put out by Mr. Trump himself, a photo since taken down of the judge's law clerk posing with Democratic Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, the unmistakable suggestion that Mr. Trump can't get a fair shake at trial as he continues to rail against the case as politically motivated, causing Judge Engoron to hand down a limited gag order. Mr. Trump now banned from talking about court staff, but continuing to attack New York's Attorney General, Letitia James.
Any comment on the gag order?
Her office walking the judge through hours of Mr. Trump's finances in painstaking detail as it tries to prove the Trump Organization and its executives intentionally falsified their business records in the hopes of securing favorable loan terms and insurance rates. While Mr. Trump's legal team argues the state cannot prove any intent to defraud. Yet on the witness stand, Mr. Trump's longtime accountant at Mazars admitted that the Trump Organization didn't provide his firm with all of the necessary records to accurately complete the financial statements so central to the case.
It is the defendants, and the defendants alone, who provided the numbers, the data, and the false valuations.
Also central to the case, the Republican presidential frontrunner opting to step off the campaign trail, back in court today, saying he too will take the stand.
Mr. Trump, will you be testifying?
Yes, I will. At the appropriate time, I will be.
In reality, Mr. Trump's testimony is still weeks away. The next major witness likely to take the stand, his company's chief financial officer, who went to prison briefly for tax-related crimes himself, and Mr. Trump has said was the one who was helping to prepare those financial statements that are so contested in this case. Back to you.
All right, Laura, thank you.
Well, the east is getting some sunshine. Meanwhile, strong to severe storms could be heading down south.
Meteorologist Michelle Grossman is here and tracking it all. Michelle, good morning.
Hi there, guys. Yeah, we're looking at the battle of the seasons here. So we have cooler air to the west. We have warmer air to the east. That middle zone, that clash zone, is where we're going to see those strong to severe storms. So really fall like back to the west, temperatures in the 50s and 60s in a lot of spots. And then out ahead of this front, we're looking at temperatures well above normal once again. Record-breaking temperatures in some spots, even as high as 25 degrees above what is typical for this this time of year. Big area of high pressure kind of bringing in that heat. In between here, we have a cold front that's sweeping through slowly. It will finally sweep out this warm air. But first, we're going to see the chance for very strong storms throughout the afternoon to evening hours in the southern plains into the lower Mississippi Valley. That includes some really heavy rain, large hail, baseball-sized hail in some spots, and also the chance for some tornadoes. So let's take a look at the temperatures because this remains a really big story. Temperatures so above normal once again into the upper 80s in a lot of spots. Buffalo, New York, 87 degrees today, 24 degrees above what is typical for this time of year. We're ready to see those leaves change, and it's still feeling like summer there. Cincinnati, 88 degrees, 82 in Pittsburgh, 86 in Nashville. It's warm, too, as you go further to the east. New York City today, well above normal, 15 degrees above average today at 84 degrees. Same story in Burlington, Vermont. Then as we go throughout tomorrow, we're going to keep the heat in place. That's ahead of the front still, where we're looking at temperatures into the 70s in Chicago, but much better than just 2 days ago. They were into the upper 80s there. Now 71 degrees, still above normal, but getting closer to average as that front gets a little bit closer. 73 in St. Louis, still really warm though, 82 in Buffalo, 19 degrees above normal for this time of year. There's that cold front as it moves further east. It's going to bring some rain with it as well, but it's going to bring some much cooler air. So notice in Cleveland, Friday 71, Saturday 57, into the low 50s by Sunday. Same story in Boston, into the low 60s as we go towards Sunday. We're going to trade off with some rain there with what's left over from Philippe at that point. And Roanoke, temperatures into the upper 60s on Saturday and low 60s on Sunday. So let's talk about those storms because this is that dividing line, the transition zone, the clash zone where the warm air meets that cooler air, and that's where we're going to see this chance for some really strong storms, mainly in the southern plains. Some heavy rainfall, though, extending into portions of the lower Mississippi Valley. Downpours may lead to localized flash flooding. That's on the roadways, low-lying areas, but also could make the streams and creeks and rivers rise a bit. So that's today. We're going to watch that throughout the afternoon and evening hours. And there's that cold front on the move tomorrow. A lot of showers and storms tracking further to the east. And then the greatest chance for storms and showers, heavy rain from Michigan all the way to Mississippi, where you see those brighter colors, the reds, the oranges, the yellows. That's where we're expecting the chance for the heaviest amount of rain. And there is a lot of moisture with this system. This is what radar looks like right now. Clear to see where that cold front is. You can see where that rain, kind of that line of rain, that is the cold front. And that's what we're going to be watching as we go throughout the afternoon. Once we really get the daytime heating go, that's going to spark some storms as we go throughout the afternoon. As a result, 10 million people at risk in the southern plains throughout Oklahoma, into portions of Missouri, Arkansas, also Texas, under the risk for some really strong storms. And look at that, large hail up to 2 inches. That's baseball-size hail. Winds gusting up to 75 miles per hour. That could bring down trees. It could bring down power lines because that's hurricane force wind, and a tornado or two is possible, and also that really heavy rain. Mentioned that softball-size hail, even bigger than baseball. We're looking at from the hatched area from Oklahoma City. That includes you. Also, Lubbock could see some very, very large hail, but also portions of in Dallas and other portions of Texas could see some large hail as well. We're concerned about the heavy rain that could lead to some flash flooding. So if you're out and about in this area later on this afternoon into the evening hours, you want to keep note with this. You want to listen to your warnings, localized areas where we could see some flooding. Dallas, Texarkana, also Longview, where you see the pink, that's the highest amount, or the likeliest chance of seeing that really heavy rainfall. But there's a good chance for everyone from Texas to Oklahoma, even up to portions of the lower Mississippi Valley. Lots of reds, oranges, and yellows. That's where we're seeing the heaviest amount. Then as we look towards Friday, you see that cold front moving off to the east. So then portions of the northeast, the interior parts into parts of the Gulf Plains, Gulf Coast states could see some heavy rain as well.
All right. Thank you, Michelle. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, coming up, AI on campus. Is the use of programs like ChatGPT or Google's Bard considered cheating if used on a college application? We will take a closer look.
But first, new details in the thwarted kidnapping of 9-year-old Charlotte Senna, including formal charges filed against her suspected abductor. We've got the latest up next.
I wish for the amazing new iPhone 15 Pro.
Sean, do you mean this one, the one with titanium? Switch to Verizon. You can trade in any iPhone and get the new iPhone 15 Pro on them.
It's your last chance to trade in any iPhone for a new iPhone 15 Pro on us, only on Verizon.
We're back with new details about the kidnapping of 9-year-old Charlotte Senna. The suspected abductor is now in custody and charged with first-degree kidnapping. Officials are now questioning the suspect for a motive behind Charlotte's disappearance. NBC News correspondent Kathy Park joins us now with the very latest. Kathy, good morning.
Hey, Joe, good morning to you. That suspected kidnapper, Craig Nelson Ross Jr., is being held without bail. And Charlotte's family, they are grateful for the massive response that brought their little girl home. But this morning, there are growing questions as to whether Charlotte was targeted or taken randomly. This morning, new details coming into focus after the remarkable rescue of 9-year-old Charlotte Senna, who vanished from a park in upstate New York while camping with her family.
I was shocked.
Police releasing this mugshot of 46-year-old Craig Nelson Ross Jr., who's accused of kidnapping Charlotte and leaving a ransom note at her family's home. According to an arraignment memo, the suspect wanted money in exchange for Charlotte's return. He's now in jail without bail, charged with first-degree kidnapping, and authorities say additional charges are likely.
There's still a lot of searches underway. The home that he was registered to, a lot of information, and so we want to make sure that he's not connected with any other cases.
Authorities say Ross Jr. left behind his fingerprint on the ransom note, a critical clue that matched a 1999 DWI. The breakthrough allowed SWAT teams to zero in on a camper behind the suspect's mother's home. That's where they found the girl, hidden inside a cupboard. Investigators combing through the scene Tuesday, collecting evidence.
She appeared to be outwardly physically unharmed at the time.
Charlotte's family telling NBC News, "We are thrilled that she is home, and we understand that the outcome is not what every family gets." At least 400 people worked around the clock to find the fourth grader, including members of the Schenectady Fire Department. Fire Chief Don Moreno says the case was personal because Charlotte's uncle is one of their own.
Everybody was concerned. Everybody was upset. The range of emotions were, tremendous, to shock, to anger.
Now relief and gratitude, with Charlotte back in the arms of family.
The outcome was great, and everybody's elated today.
And the suspect's court date is scheduled for later on this month. NBC News has reached out to his attorney, but we are still waiting for a response.
All right,
Joe?
Kathy Park, thank you so much. Now to some international headlines. In India, police have launched sweeping raids on journalists. NBC's Claudio Labonga joins us from Rome with that and other world news. Claudio, good morning.
Good morning, guys. That's right. Police in Delhi say they raided the homes of several journalists linked to an independent news website, which is known to have been critical to the Indian government and to India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi in the past. Now, during the raid, 46 people linked to the NewsClick website, that's the name, have been questioned, and digital devices and documents were seized. Police say they arrested the news organization's founder and editor under an anti-terror law, but critics called the law draconian and the raid an attack to press freedom. Now let's go to the Philippines, where authorities opened an investigation into the collision between a Filipino fishing boat and a so-called foreign vessel in the South China Sea, which killed 3 Filipino fishermen. According to survivors and the Philippine Coast Guard, the fishing boat was struck by another boat in the early hours of Monday. Today, the Coast Guard said they will reach out to an oil tanker that was traveling from South Korea to Singapore, which was in the area at that time. And finally, let's head to Indonesia, where an endangered rhino gave birth to a calf that gives its species a little hope. The calf is from a critically endangered Sumatran rhino and was born in a national park. There are only 80 Sumatran rhinos left in Indonesia, so it's no wonder that the country's Environment and Forestry Minister called the birth happy news not just for Indonesia, but for the rest of the world. But the happiest of them all, of course, looks like is the mother, of course, who looks like on those pictures that he's taking good care of her.
Oh, my goodness. What an adorable little rhino. All right, Claudio, thank you so much. Coming up, Tupac is back in the headlines this morning as the man who has been charged with his murder heads to court today, more than 25 years after the rapper's death. So what sparked the arrest? Turns out it was his own words. We'll explain next. Welcome back. The man charged with the 1996 murder of rapper Tupac Shakur is scheduled to make his first court appearance in Las Vegas today. Dwayne Davis is not the accused gunman, but investigators say he ordered the killing of Shakur. And now, 27 years after the murder, new details have been released in the case. NBC News national correspondent Miguel Almaguer has more.
For the first time in nearly 3 decades, police have made an arrest in the murder of Tupac Shakur. Now that suspect will be in court today as we see new evidence for the first time.
The evidence shown to the grand jury includes surveillance video of Tupac Shakur leaving a casino shortly before he was gunned down, and new photos of the crime scene, the rapper's bullet-riddled car. Investigators say it helped lead to the arrest of the man they say orchestrated the drive-by shooting. Self-described gang member Dwayne Davis making his first court appearance today.
For 27 years, the family of Tupac Shakur has been waiting for justice.
Investigators say it was Davis's own words that reinvigorated their case. Some of his previous interviews, like in this BET documentary, shared with the grand jury.
Who shot Tupac?
To keep from the cold of the streets. It just came from the backseat for him.
While detectives do not believe Davis was the shooter, he has long admitted he was inside the gunman's car when shots were fired.
Wayne Davis was the shot caller for this group of individuals that committed this crime, and he orchestrated the plan.
Police say the shooting was in retaliation for this brawl, in which Tupac and record executive Suge Knight were seen beating up Davis's nephew, Orlando Anderson, who was said to be the alleged gunman. The dueling parties affiliated with gangs. Retired LAPD detective Greg Kading says Davis confessed to his role in the shooting during a 2009 plea agreement, in which his office gave Davis a reduced drug charge in exchange for testimony.
The proffer agreement just simply says that when you sit down and talk to us, whatever you say that is self-incriminating, we won't use against you. It's not immunity.
Authorities say the other men in the car that night are all dead. Tupac's brother says the family still has questions.
We're feeling grateful. We're in shock to a certain degree because it's been so long. There's still a lot of unanswered questions. We're cautiously optimistic.
Today's court hearing is an arraignment. It's unclear if the suspect will enter a plea. We do also expect a judge to set the first date for the trial. Back to you.
All right, Miguel, thank you. After a summer plagued by high airfares, travelers will be happy to know prices are dropping. The Consumer Price Index tells us flights are down 13% year over year. But will these lower prices last as we head into the holiday season? For the latest on fall travel trends, let's bring in Katie Nastro, travel expert at Going. Good to have you with us. All right, so we're thinking about Thanksgiving, maybe even thinking about Christmas. Should we be booking now? Should we have booked already? When should we be booking?
Well, you should definitely be booking now if you haven't already done so. And, consider this. Thanksgiving's actually the hidden best time out of the entire year to fly internationally. So many people are looking to visit family and friends domestically, sort of pushing up the price for domestic airfare. However, not many people are looking to fly internationally, and cheap flights are to be had at that time period. You can fly from New York over to Porto, Portugal for $419 round trip. Maybe you're based in Atlanta, you can head down to Costa Rica for only $290. Or maybe you're on the West Coast, you can fly over to Dublin from LA for only $498 round trip, all over the week of Thanksgiving, and are bookable now.
And then your family can argue and debate who has to make the meals while you're in these
they can
other
come
places. Or just abandon your family.
Over,
I see.
Yeah,
you're like,
over the winter
bye.
holidays. You'll see them at the next holiday.
Okay, got it. All right, sounds good. So what if you do have points or you have miles? Is now a good time to use them? What are your best tips for using those things for your travel?
Sure. So if you are considering going away over the winter holidays when cash prices tend to be on the higher side, this is actually a really great time to consider using your rewards. When cash prices are high, you usually get the best reward value or your redemption value for things like points and miles. And you don't have to just hoard those points and miles and use them towards front of the plane seats. You can definitely take advantage and use them for economy trips and ask yourself, are these rewards in allowing me to take trips that I wouldn't necessarily have been able to otherwise?
That's a good mindset, right? This is a reward. You should treat it like a reward, right?
Hey, any travel, any class of travel is good travel, in my opinion.
Exactly. All right, so you mentioned international travel. For a lot of people, that's been a challenge because of processing passport applications. It's been such a slow process. Is that getting better? Where does that stand?
I have great news.
Okay, good.
For the first time since February, or March, I should say, we've actually seen standard processing times for passports down by 2 weeks. So it went from 10 to 13, sometimes more. We've heard stories of way more. Now quoted to be 8 to 11, and even less for expedited, 5 to 7. So if you are considering some international travel for Thanksgiving or over the winter holidays, send that passport in. Pony up, do expedited, just to be sure. But it is definitely a sigh of relief for many people that are considering sending their passport in or applying for one.
And the reminder for folks, a lot of times who are traveling, maybe their passport expires 6 months from now. That doesn't mean you can travel now, right? That
Correct.
You need to get that taken care of.
You should definitely dust off the passport, see how much time you have left, because oftentimes countries won't, or you won't even be allowed on that plane if you don't have a certain amount of time left on your passport after. 6 months is a good rule of thumb, but again, you should just be a bit proactive with your passport expiration date, always.
All right, it's good. Get us in the mood of thinking about our holiday travel. Appreciate it. Katie and Astor, good to have you with us.
Thanks so much.
All right, coming up, is it cheating to use AI programs like ChatGPT on your college application? Well, after the break, Savannah is going to take a closer look at how artificial intelligence is transforming the admissions process. Stick around. We'll be right back. We're back with financial headlines and some bad news. A couple of the big streamers are expected to raise their prices again. CNBC's Silvana Henao joins us with that and other money news. Silvana, good morning.
Hey, Joe, good morning. Yeah, because things aren't expensive enough already. Discovery Plus is hiking the price of its ad-free version from $6.99 to $8.99 a month. Existing subscribers will see their monthly rate increase on their next bill. Prices for subscriptions with ads won't change, and the Wall Street Journal reports Netflix will raise the price of its ad-free service a few months after the Hollywood actor strike ends. It's discussing raising prices in several markets, but will likely begin with the U.S. and Canada. Gmail is getting more tools to help fight spam. Starting in February, anyone who tries to send more than 5,000 messages to Gmail addresses in a single day will now have to authenticate the email. Google says this will close loopholes typically used by spammers or hackers. Book senders will also be required to set up an unsubscribe option. Google will also start enforcing a clear spam threshold to prevent users from being bombarded with unwanted messages. And a steep rise in the price of cocoa and sugar are set to hit lovers of candy and other sweets in their wallets. Sugar prices hit their highest level in 12 years recently, and cocoa reaching a 4-decade high. The increases being driven by supply fears with extreme weather conditions in Asia and West Africa is threatening production. Analysts say this is all likely to feed through into higher retail prices. Consumers can also expect shrinkflation with smaller package sizes. I've already seen smaller package sizes.
I know. I'm just going to have to give out apples for Halloween this year.
Yeah.
All right. Savannah Henao, thank you so much.
You got it.
The first round of college application deadlines are just a few weeks away, and one big thing on students' minds this year is artificial intelligence. In one survey of 1,000 students, nearly half said they were using AI in their schoolwork. So how does that impact the all-important college essay? Here's what I found.
ChatGPT, Bard, and Bing all offer free AI that can generate a college application essay in seconds, and it's sparking a growing debate. Are these apps giving students a helpful leg up, or an outright way to cheat? With so much gray area, we tested them out ourselves.
I went back to school and I wrote a college admissions essay. I used one of the prompts from the Common app that asks you to describe a challenge or a setback and how you overcame it. What I decided to talk about was the anxiety disorder that I had when I was in high school. Now I'm going to go to ChatGPT and I'm going to ask it to write me a college essay using this prompt and giving it a couple of the details about myself. All I've told it so far is the prompt, and it's already writing an entire essay.
There are noticeable differences between the two. My essay sounds a little more casual and personal. I wrote, I worried constantly about saying the right thing to my peers, all people I perceived to be much cooler than me. I didn't want to get out of the car several days a week when it was time for my dad to drop me off. The ChatGPT version, more formal. It all started during my early teenage years when I began experiencing severe anxiety about attending school. Each morning, the simple act of stepping onto the school bus or walking through the school doors filled me with a paralyzing dread. But to really put it to the test, I brought both versions to the University of Maryland. Shannon Gundy has spent over 30 years in college admissions.
I think it's pretty obvious. There is a humanity in the essay that you wrote that doesn't exist. It just doesn't exist in the AI essay.
So for you, this would pretty quickly make you feel that the student had not actually taken the assignment in the proper way.
Absolutely. We get the same information, but I don't care about the person behind it.
Can you point out some things in
Sure.
this essay, the AI one, that just don't sound like a 17 or 18-year-old wrote it?
The sentence that ends the first paragraph. This obstacle not only reshaped my life, but also laid the foundation for my personal growth and success. That's not how students talk.
Gundy says an overly polished essay that doesn't sound like the student won't help gain admission.
It's not going to benefit a student to present a picture of themselves that's inauthentic, that's just not true in some cases, because then you don't land in the right place.
Is using AI in this college admissions process cheating?
I don't think using it is cheating. I think that using it to do your work for you is cheating.
The tools are going to get better, and admissions officers are going to have to figure out ways to police that.
Saul Khan, the founder of one of the country's largest education nonprofits, has created Conmigo, an AI education tool with a new college admission essay brainstorming feature to help students in a different way.
It won't write the essay for you, but it can give you feedback.
Used correctly, Khan says AI could help kids with fewer resources, like guidance counselors or tutors, improve their essay and democratize the admissions process.
It can brainstorm with you so that you can, to some degree, get the same help that some more affluent kids are already getting and, frankly, have been getting for decades.
Still, this may mark a new era in college admissions. The question is, are we ready for it?
Are you concerned that you're going to be inundated in the admissions office by essays that look and sound like this AI one, given how widespread the technology is?
I certainly hope not. What I would like in my ideal world is for students to understand that this is an opportunity for them to sort of open the door and allow us a peek inside who they are. We can't do that. If they choose to take advantage of this kind of technology, if they choose not to share that information with us, it's going to hurt them in the process.
We reached out to the big companies making these AI products. Google says, in part, we see Bard as a collaborative tool and that Bard can be a useful tool to supplement a student's existing work. Microsoft and OpenAI declined to comment. For now, many schools don't have official rules about what does and doesn't count as cheating. As we discussed with both of our interview subjects, there's a huge gray area of what might be okay and what might not be, but it's a problem that won't go away anytime soon.
Let's keep the conversation going and bring in Professor Christian Hammond, a professor of computer science at Northwestern University. Good to have you with us. So, many would argue using ChatGPT to write college admissions essays is a form of plagiarism or cheating. How much of a challenge is this for colleges? And realistically, how easy is it for them to detect the use of these AI tools?
It's an astounding challenge right now. And that is that what we're now looking at is a world in which we have a semi-professional writer at the disposal of every single person who has access to a computer. And how do we manage the fact that sometimes we want to evaluate people based upon their writing skills when those writing skills are now freely available to them? And I would have to say, from my perspective, use of these tools is not cheating. It's not plagiarism in that is that you get style, but not word for word. And the issue is when someone puts together a new essay using these tools, understanding that in order for them to be really great, in order for the essay to read well, in order for it to be truthful and come from them, they have to interact with those tools a great deal. And it's not just that the system is building something, it's the system and the person are building something. Mm-hmm. And the skill that manifests is an astoundingly powerful skill, particularly for the coming era.
Yeah, as we look to the future. So let's look at maybe another argument, which is some say these AI tools can be beneficial to certain applicants. They democratize admissions, giving those students who might not have had access to a tutor or a counselor. They get a leg up with that. Is that fair? Are there positive aspects to this beyond what you described, which is helping to sort of educate kids to use AI for the future?
It absolutely democratizes sort of the access to the skills needed. So when in the era before, when I applied to college, I actually had an English teacher look at my essays and give me feedback. But not everybody has that. And having a system that you can use to either help you generate or help you refine your work is something that actually it levels the playing field. And yes, as the admissions counselor had said, sometimes the result is not quite human, but it can be made so. That is that you have to work it, and understanding how to work it, and understanding how to change the language, understanding what you want, understanding how to communicate that. Those are genuine cognitive skills that we want everyone to have, and to be able to look at the result and look at that result critically and edit things as needed. Again, unbelievably powerful, useful skills. So we are not in an era of writing everything out longhand anymore. We're in an era of tools that can help us think, that can help us write, that can help us be better, and that will work in partnership with us.
We only have like 30 seconds left here, but because of this, do you foresee colleges potentially just ending these essays altogether?
Oh, no, not at all. I think that what it means is the bar is going to go up. Mm-hmm. That we're going to be looking for more from our applicants. We're going to be looking for better from our applicants, because the bar that the tools that we have a set is already high, and we are going to ask students to be even better than that. And it's going to be a matter of how to embrace these technologies, not how to deny them.
All right, Professor Hammond from Northwestern University, my alma mater, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Oh, no, thank you for having me.
Coming up, holding on to hope. After the break, we're going to take you inside the fight to bring comprehensive mental health services and resources to the student athletes who need them most. That's next on Morning News Now.
Welcome back. This week is National Student Athlete Mental Health Week, and we want to take a look at some of the stresses this group of young people face and the resources that are there to help. That brings us to the story of Tyler Hilinski. He was a promising young quarterback at Washington State University who took his own life in 2018. In the wake of that tragedy, Tyler's parents started the Hilinski Hope Foundation, a nonprofit formed to promote awareness and education on mental wellness for student athletes and strengthen mental health resources on campus. They also created this week to focus on the important work that needs to be done, and we are lucky enough to be joined by them now. Thank you both so very much for being here in studio with us to talk about this work. And first, I hope, if you don't mind, to talk about your son, to talk about Tyler. I'd love to hear from both of you just about his legacy, his memory, what he was like as your son.
Sure.
Yeah, we love talking about him. It's hard because he's not here with us, but he was a good, sweet, kind kid. He was the middle of our three sons, was loved by his teammates, by his coaches, by his friends. We doted on him so much, and he had this wonderful energy for life, right? And he was good to people. And we never noticed that he was struggling. He never shared that maybe he was depressed or anxious. And one day, January 16th, 2018, he took his life by firearm, and he didn't even know how to use the gun that he used. And we thought, if our sweet Tyler, who would just give anybody the shirt off his back, was struggling so much, how many other student athletes out there are struggling? How many other Tylers are so afraid to reach out and ask for help because they feel that it's a weakness, and it truly isn't. it's a strength. But these set of stressors on these student athletes that they're dealing with, you know, their lives are full of a lot of pressure. And that, I think, really affects their mental health.
Let's talk about that. What is it that these student athletes are facing, especially if a parent, like you're saying, maybe has no idea that they are struggling with something? Help us understand what it's like to be in that position and how tough it is to come forward.
Well, I think, you know, we get asked a lot, what should we do differently? And we're not mental health practitioners, and there's some really great ones out there that we get to work with. But you got to follow your gut. And I know that seems super obvious. And in Tyler's case, you know, as Kim was sort of describing, happy kid, fun, you know, I'm going to go throw rocks at a tree. Great, let's go. You know, it didn't really matter what we were doing. And so to lose somebody with that much energy in life, what was his last couple days like? What was he really struggling with? And that's been a journey of ours since we started. But we got to get in front of our student athletes. What's different, in addition to school and the game they love? You know, they were the best on their team when they were in high school, most likely in that group. College sports and athletics is different. Now you've got NIL and the transfer portal. And, you know, of course, this last group had to go through COVID. So I think there's a tremendous amount of stress already. And we've added a few more things.
And at an age where you don't fully know how to handle that. You're not equipped.
That's exactly right.
No, you know, we're taught from a young age. We teach our kids, our athletes, you know, how to eat right, how to train right, but they're not really taught how to take care of their mental health as they grow up. And then you throw in social media and everything that is going on with the phones and fans, you know, that are not too kind to our athletes. It's just a lot that they are juggling on their plate. They've got school, they've got tests, they've got exams, and they've got these practices that they need to get to and games where they want to perform well. And it's a struggle for all of them to get through all of it.
How do we make it easier for them to say, I need help?
I think to us, one of the most important things is to address the stigma. You know, to be able to be here and to talk about this stuff. Suicide's an ugly word, and mental health is a difficult topic for some of our guys. But what Kim and I see, you know, we've been to 200 campuses across the country in the last few years. And despite the number of resources one campus may have over the other, we've got to get them to ask for help, to sort of self-identify. And so at Helinski's Hope, we've created a modular series, you know, just a very, it's a beginning sort of conversations about mental health. We don't have those at the high school level or even pre-high school.
Wow.
So that's an important topic to discuss, is the education.
And let's talk about this week. Over 160 universities and colleges, right? Yep. What does this week mean? What resources does it provide? If you are a student athlete on one of these campuses, what do you see?
Yeah, well, what we see is as we prepare these boxes of hope and we put in helmet decals, lapel pins, hair ties, cheer bows, we've got some patches, some temporary tattoos, and our bands, we ship them out to these schools, and it runs September 30th through October 7th, and it changes each year. But what happens, what really strikes us, and the impact is what happens on the campus, what these mental health professionals and what these student athletes do to come together to say, I matter, my mental health matters, and we're going to focus on it, and we're going to take care of our mental health this week and moving forward. So the things that they do, they bring in, you know, animal support dogs. They just get together for meals. They journal. They do art projects. They do yoga out on the football field. They bring in special speakers. And it's just a week where I think the world can come together to let our student athletes know how much they matter, how much their mental health matters, and they have to take care of it.
In 20, 30 seconds, a young person watching or their parent, what's the biggest takeaway you want them to hear from your message, your family?
That there's no difference between mental health help and physical health help. If sadly you were diagnosed with cancer, we'd immediately find you the best oncologist and the treatment plans. There should be no difference here. Don't be embarrassed. It takes a lot of guts right now, but it should be an everyday thing to ask to treat your mental health.
Mark and Kim, thank you for joining. Thank you for sharing about Tyler. We appreciate it. Such an important conversation that we're happy to amplify.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If you or anyone you know is struggling, you can call or text the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline at 988. Thank you for that conversation, Savannah. Finally, this hour, they are not the first siblings to play against each other in a Major League Baseball game. But as the playoffs get underway, two brothers on opposing sides are united over something bigger than the game. Here's Sam Brock.
In Florida, family on different sides of the diamond. Nathaniel Lowe of the Texas Rangers taking on little brother Josh and the Tampa Bay Rays.
We could be friends on Saturday.
Nathaniel scoring the first run of the playoffs, even as baseball's on the back burner for the two rising talents.
Brothers Lowe taking out the cards for their respective clubs.
A few months ago, in their first professional showdown, their mom Wendy sported a split jersey with Lowe on the front. But right now, the family says she's resting at home, battling brain cancer and cheering for her sons through the TV screen.
It's a lot to go through, and yeah, it's a pretty heavy toll.
How much does it mean to your mom to see you and your brother play in person?
It means everything for her.
These two have had each other's back all season.
Well, not many people are able to say they have a sibling that plays the same professional sport as you. Having seen him have success that he has is it makes it feel really good.
But their love and support for their mom is now on full display under baseball's brightest lights.
She's one of the strongest people in our family.
As Wendy enters her third week of chemotherapy.
The more people that know about this, the more prayers that are going to be heard, the more people that are going to be praying for her for a healing. I mean, there's so many different things that are bigger than baseball.
Countless fans at home rooting not for a team, but for a family. Sam Brock, NBC News, St. Petersburg, Florida.
That does it for this hour of Morning News Now.
But the news continues right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.
I wish for the amazing new iPhone 15 Pro.
Sean, do you mean this one, the one with titanium? Switch to Verizon. You can trade in any iPhone and get the new iPhone 15 Pro on them.
It's your last chance to trade in any iPhone for a new iPhone 15 Pro on us, only on Verizon.
Breaking right now on Morning News Now, panic and fear in Gaza ahead of a highly anticipated ground attack. This morning, Israel ordering Gazans to evacuate as its military presence grows at the border. Meanwhile, more rocket fire raining down on the Hamas-run region. The death toll getting higher as of this morning. More than 2,800 have been killed in the fighting, at least 27 of them American and several others still missing. And now a strong show of support from the U.S. with the Secretary of State and Secretary of Defense now both in the Middle East.
It's hard to find the right words. It's beyond what anyone would ever want to imagine, much less actually see and, God forbid, experience.
This as families of those still missing plead for help finding their loved ones. Back here in the U.S., authorities bracing for protests as a former Hamas leader calls for a worldwide day of rage.
Good morning. Good to have you with us on this Friday. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers.
Let's begin with NBC News foreign correspondent Kelly Kobiea, who joins us from Jerusalem as part of our team coverage this morning. So, Kelly, the Israeli military has warned more than 1 million people in the northern part of Gaza to move south within 24 hours. What more are they saying about this order? Is this part of the preparation for this expected ground offensive?
Well, it very well could be, but they're not saying much. They're definitely not backing off of this order, though, Joe and Savannah, that they are sticking by it, even as the UN says that it could come with devastating humanitarian consequences. There are people who are packing up in Gaza. They're trying to get out. They're trying to move south. The problem, well, there are many of them. There aren't enough cars, first of all, to get people to the south. There isn't enough fuel for people to fill their tanks and get south. And once they get there, there's nowhere for them to stay. Compounding that problem, Gaza City in the north is where the Strip's largest hospital is located, Shifa Hospital. People have been taking shelter there. There are scores, hundreds of people being treated there. Evacuating a hospital in less than 24 hours is just not even conceivable, and that is why you're hearing the United Nations saying, look, this is going to end in tragedy for lots of people. Compounding the problem, you have infrastructure issues. There is a way to get south, but there are also roads that are blocked for some families after just days, 6 days of intensive bombing. 750 more targets hit by the IDF overnight, according to Defense Forces. Guys.
Kelly, what's the reaction been like to this order from inside Gaza, people who live there who don't know where to go? You mentioned also how the UN has reacted, but expand on that. Tell us what human rights groups are saying.
Yeah, I mean, it's virtually impossible for a lot of these people to leave. They, don't have, there's been a blockade on the Gaza Strip for the past 6 days. That means no water, no food, no fuel for generators, no medicine, nothing is getting in. The Gaza Strip is 25 miles long and a couple miles across. So the distances between the north and south are not massive, but the problem is just simply getting there. People are afraid. There are hundreds of children who have been killed already. There are hundreds of thousands of people, according to the United Nations, who are homeless because of the bombing, close to 400,000 people. So it's simply a matter of getting from A to B. It's not possible for a lot of people to make that journey, and people are very, very frightened. There are no bomb shelters. There are no sirens there. There's nowhere to hide from the bombs, and they simply don't know what to do at this point.
Kelly, this morning we also heard from Hamas alleging that some of the hostages who were taken from Israel back into Gaza, that they've been killed by the Israeli bombing of Gaza. What is Hamas saying about that, and what are Israeli officials saying about it?
Yeah, Hamas claims that 13 hostages were killed in the airstrikes. I'm not sure if there's an exact timing connected to that, but they have made similar claims in the past. The Israeli officials, from what we've seen, have not yet responded to that. Please correct me if you've seen something that I haven't. But in the past, just a couple of days ago, when similar claims arose, the Israeli government warned against taking Hamas at its word. So I suspect we would hear something similar now. And quite frankly, we haven't seen any evidence. We can't verify the claims, so we just don't know whether any hostages have been killed in the airstrikes. Joe, Savannah.
And Kelly, we know that Secretary Blinken met with the Palestinian president in Jordan earlier today. This is after visiting Israel yesterday. What came out of those talks?
Yeah, so we're still waiting for a readout from the U.S. side, but Secretary of State Antony Blinken did meet with Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian Authority president. He is deeply unpopular among Palestinians, so he's walking a very fine line after these terrorist attacks by Hamas on Saturday. In fact, he has not directly condemned the attacks. He has condemned attacks on civilians in general on both sides. So it'll be interesting to hear what that conversation was like, what the readout is, and whether Abbas is able to come out and strongly say that he condemns what happened to so many Israelis in the South on Saturday. Guys.
All right, Kelly Kobaya, thank you for starting us out this hour.
Let's continue our coverage with NBC News Chief Foreign Correspondent Richard Engel, who has more on the humanitarian crisis unfolding in Gaza right now, and a warning some scenes might be distressing for viewers.
Come in. There's an air war in Gaza, with Hamas firing barrages of rockets toward Israel, to little effect. Israel's Iron Dome missile defense system launching tiny projectiles at supersonic speed, intercepting and destroying nearly all of them. Israel's airstrikes are not being stopped. They're slamming into Gaza, where there are no air defenses. The United Nations is sounding the alarm of a growing humanitarian crisis. Human rights groups are calling for civilians to be allowed to leave and for aid to enter the 139 square mile territory that's home to 2 million Palestinians, 40% of them under 15. Israel says it will keep attacking Gaza until Hamas is destroyed. The Israeli military says it only targets Hamas. But what about the children? Medical officials say more than 1,500 Palestinians have been killed and 6,000 wounded. And those numbers could grow quickly. Israel's military is amassing tanks and troops along the border with Gaza. Its chief of staff saying now it is time for war and that the head of Hamas and all those who operate under him deserve to die. 22-year-old Palistia Al-Akkad lives in Gaza.
The media is barely covering any news because of the situation. There is no electricity, there is no connection. Like, Israelis are literally bombing everywhere, nowhere is safe. These words, life in Gaza, right now they don't make any sense to any Gazan living in here because we don't know what does the word life mean. We're expecting death at any minute. We're expecting that the whole Gaza Strip will be erased at any minute.
The Gaza Strip is bordered by Israel, the Mediterranean Sea, and Egypt. All exits are closed and blocked. Refugees are not streaming out. This isn't Ukraine. No one is taking in the people of Gaza.
We couldn't handle this amount of injuries, and it's just heartbreaking.
Dr. Sarah Al-Sakah is a Palestinian surgeon based in Gaza. She says she's working 24-hour shifts, and when she can, is posting to social media to show conditions there.
No one can leave Gaza. No one can enter Gaza. There is no crossing borders, nothing left for anyone to do. It's a huge, big cage that we are trapped inside, and someone from outside is just keep on bombing, non-stop bombing, and there is nowhere else to go.
Israel says it had no choice but to attack, to disarm and deter Hamas, after more than 1,500 gunmen stormed into Israel, butchered entire families, desecrated their bodies, killed at least 1,300 Jews, and took hostages, including children and the elderly. Israel's reprisal is underway. It is massive, intensifying, and could trigger a regional war.
And our thanks to Richard Engel for that report.
Yeah, we just heard from Richard. There is nowhere to go in Gaza. People are essentially trapped, and that includes American Hashan Kayoud. The husband and father from Texas left 2 weeks ago to vacation in Gaza with his brother and nephew. And now as Israel prepares to launch its ground offensive, they have no way of getting out.
So his wife, Haifa Kayoud, joins us now from their home near Dallas. Haifa, thank you so much for joining us during this tough time. Israel's military, as we've been reporting this morning, now ordering civilians to evacuate to the southern part of Gaza. I know you've been able to have some communication with your husband. What is he telling you?
The situation is very bad and bombing every day, 24 hours. Last night I was texting him. Only we contact through text because there is no any electricity or calls. So he was absent for 2 hours and then he came back. He said 40 bombs in this couple of hours only. And we need to get out. He is there with his brothers. He has his elder brother. He's sick with heart disease, and they're supposed to be out by now. And it's bad. Now he just texted me. They're getting ready to move from north to south. So how they will go, how they will move, I don't know.
So your husband, he's been in the north at this point. Do you know where he will stay when he gets to the south?
They have a cousin there, and I don't know. They will go to his cousin's house. There are almost 40 people now in the house with his brothers, nephews, nieces. How they will manage this, I don't know.
Wow. I know you've been calling immigration services, U.S. embassies, elected officials in hopes of trying to get help to get your family out of Gaza. What have they been saying? Have you heard anything concrete or been able to make any progress?
No, nothing. I was calling, leaving messages, but nothing came out. We are stressed. We don't know if he will come back safely or not. Hopefully, he will be back safely. But we are under big stress.
What is going through your mind right now, Haifa?
Now, after the news of taking the North people out, was my hope more. Now my hope is going less, that he can make it and get out. And only I'm praying to bring my husband back to me, and all with his brothers. They went 5 from here, 4 from California, my husband from Texas. They joined together and they went for vacation 2 weeks and come back. And now they are stuck.
You mentioned that your brother-in-law has heart disease. We know that the situation in Gaza is getting tough from a medical perspective as well. Supplies running low, hospitals having been damaged and very limited. Do you know how he's doing?
2 days ago, my husband, I asked him, how's your brother? He said he's having like kind of flu symptoms with diarrhea and he's not feeling well, but he can't reach to any clinic or any hospital with all this happening. So only praying for him. Last night, my husband said, I said, how do you feel? How are you? He said, I feel like I got a flu. My body is hurting me, a headache, and my eyes burning. Then I was telling him, just try to drink more water, hot things. So he's telling, the little water we have, it's not clean. So, okay, I don't know what to say, but hang on, what to do. Take Tylenol every 4 hours.
Haifa, what are you hoping for right now? How do you hope this ends?
My husband, okay, I want the war to end. Praying for all the people and my husband to come back home to his family and his brothers to go back home to their families. Their families missing him in California. I talk to their wives every day and checking how they are feeling. My sister-in-law, she has her husband and her son. Her son, for the first time ever to leave States, he went for vacation. He's 23 years old only. And seeing all this happening around him.
Haifa Kayoud, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We are thinking of your family right now, and please keep us updated on what's happening, all right?
Yeah, we'd love to talk to you again.
My daughter wanted badly to be with me, but I tried to wake her up. It's 6 a.m. now. And
we understand. No worries at all.
No worries.
We appreciate you taking the time to speak with us, all right?
She wanted to talk about her dad and how much she misses him a lot.
Absolutely. Well, we'd love to have you all back, and she can talk about him then. Thank you very much for joining us and getting up so early for us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, Secretary of State Antony Blinken is set to continue his Middle East trip this weekend, visiting several countries surrounding Israel, including Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt.
It comes after his visit to Tel Aviv yesterday, a move intended to demonstrate the White House's commitment to supporting Israel during this war with Hamas. Blinken sat down with NBC Nightly News anchor Lester Holt to discuss the future of U.S. involvement in the region and the plan to rescue American hostages.
Israeli airstrikes relentlessly bombarding Gaza with a potential ground invasion looming. This newly released body camera video from Saturday shows Israeli forces firing at militants and freeing hostages during Hamas's attack. But perhaps the most disturbing images of this war so far were released by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on social media. Photos of babies so horrifying that we will not show you.
Hamas has shown itself to be an enemy of civilization.
Netanyahu sharing those images with Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who traveled to Israel in a show of support from the U.S.
It's simply depravity in the worst imaginable way.
And Secretary Blinken had this emotional moment with a survivor from the music festival.
We're strong here, we're powerful here, in this place, now in Tel Aviv and everywhere.
I sat down with him soon after.
Is there a greater risk of a regional war at this point?
We're determined that there not be. We deployed the largest aircraft carrier group that we have, the Gerald R. Ford, to the region. We've taken other steps to make it very clear to anyone who might think of taking advantage of this moment that that would be a big mistake. We're working with many other countries in the region, countries that may have influence with those who might consider doing something to use that influence to prevent it, to avoid it.
I also traveled to the Israeli city of Ashkelon, not far from Gaza.
Ashkelon is a virtual ghost town, except for a few people we saw at a cafe. Around us, the distant rumble of explosions, airstrikes hitting targets inside Gaza. And here, just a few miles from the Gaza border, evidence of those rocket attacks we've seen so much of. The crater here in the street and the shrapnel flying in so many directions, destroying this car.
The people left here now bracing for the next phase of this war. Many told me they support a ground invasion of Gaza.
And must destroy them completely.
How will this period be remembered in Israeli history?
Be remembered as the biggest wake-up call we ever had since the Holocaust. This is the time to act, not to talk.
I met 26-year-old Daniel Tertarian at a local barber shop, still giving haircuts, a rare relic of peacetime here.
In your view, is it going to be necessary to put Israeli troops on the ground?
One thing I know for sure that this thing called Hamas, we need to finish them. Whatever it takes, whatever it costs.
People here are determined to help any way they can.
This is kind of a citizen relief organization. They've been delivering food to troops at the front line. I believe they're taking these now to some troops about 15 minutes from here, but very, very close to the Gaza border.
Sally Schiff is a dual Israeli-American citizen.
If I was young enough and I was able enough, I would be joining that army, and I think everybody here would be doing the same thing. We don't fear war. We want peace, but they're not giving us peace.
Israeli forces say they have already dropped more than 6,000 bombs on Gaza. With power cut off, hospitals are chaotic and overwhelmed. Israel vowing no humanitarian aid will be allowed into Gaza until all hostages are released. Meanwhile, 14 Americans remain unaccounted for, 27 now confirmed dead, including Adrian Netta. I met her son Nahar earlier this week, holding out hope his mom would be found alive.
I am confident, Mom, I'm confident that you're holding on. We're waiting for you. We love you.
Another family torn apart by this war.
Thanks to Lester Holt for that report.
And for more, we are joined by former Mossad Director Ephraim Halevi. Ephraim, thank you very much for joining us this morning on this. So you were the former head of what's known as really one of the best intelligence agencies in the world, and you've seen Israel under attack before. So first, if you wouldn't mind just telling us your analysis of how this compares in terms of the coordination and sophistication of the attack. And I know that you weren't familiar with classified information in this particular instance, but just your thoughts on the fact that this was able to take place undetected.
What is clear is that this was an operation which was planned in advance over a long period of time. It was kept secret, and the Hamas leadership was able to prevent any leak concerning it. We were surprised a week ago, 7 days ago, and we have paid the terrible results, the terrible fee, if you like to call it, for the fact that we did not have prior information. I assume that all this aspect of the event will be ultimately researched at the end of the war and not now, because now we are concentrating on how to turn the tide, and I believe that this is now the moment where possibly the tide may turn in the right direction.
One of the things that is happening now is trying to figure out the hostages who are currently being held by Hamas and how to get them back. We know Israel has a history of daring raids to try and rescue its citizens, but this is a different, unprecedented situation. What are some of the obstacles that the Israeli military and officials are facing? In your opinion, what needs to be done to try and get those hostages back safely?
I don't think we will get the hostages back unless the Hamas realizes that if this is not the case, and if the inevitable will happen, and the most horrendous will happen, and we will not see them back alive, I think that in that case, they must assume that the price they will pay will, from their point of view, be beyond description. And I'm not saying this in a mood of warning or trying to threaten anybody. I'm simply analyzing the situation the way it is. And if we analyze the situation the way it is, we can, under no circumstances, afford an end to this campaign until the Hamas, who launched it a week ago, and is responsible for all the death that has happened since, all the terrible events of decapitation of living people, including babies, and other aspects of a horrendous behavior on part of the people who simply flowed into the south of Israel. I think that it must be understood that Israel cannot and will not let this end in a manner that Hamas will ever be able to restore its capabilities again.
So what does that mean you think needs to happen next? Is this that land invasion from this analytical perspective that you're discussing? How is that possible?
I am not privy to the plans, and if I were, I would not reveal them. The army spokesman issued a warning to people in a certain area to move away from that. And now it is up to them to obey that order or to stay where they are and risk whatever will happen as a result of it to them. I have no idea what the plan is, but I think that it is also directed to the leadership of Hamas, because they are responsible for this. They are responsible for the lives of their citizens. And they have brought this about upon the south of Israel. And if they do not behave properly at this stage, then all the deaths that will now happen in the Gaza Strip will be because of the behavior of the Hamas leadership, none less and none more.
Ephraim Halevi, thank you very much for joining us this morning. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And let's stay on this with NBC News military analyst Colonel Jack Jacobs. Colonel, thank you very much for joining us this morning. So a big story, as we were just hearing there, this order of evacuation in Gaza by Israel's military. UN rights groups say it's simply impossible to evacuate 1 million Palestinians in 24 hours, saying it's going to have devastating humanitarian consequences and that really there's nowhere for them to go or no way for them to get somewhere else. What is your reaction to this, both the warning and then how difficult it would be to heed that warning?
Well, the IDF has said 24 hours, but it may or may not be 24 hours. They may wait until several days, but the one independent variable is whether or not the IDF thinks that it has denigrated Hamas leadership and infrastructure in northern Gaza sufficiently to permit an invasion. It might take more than 24 hours, but the 24-hour warning was evidently to get the Gazans to move south.
And the images we're seeing right now are the flyers that were sent into Gaza warning people from Israel. So, Colonel, if this is indeed laying the groundwork for this ground invasion, how do you think it is going to unfold once it starts?
Well, they told them to go south of the Wadi, which is about a third of the way down the Gaza Strip. Evidently, IDF intelligence has produced information that indicates that a large proportion of Hamas leadership is still remaining in the northern part of Gaza. Now, the Hamas has told the Gazans not to follow that order, and one can come to the inexorable conclusion that that's because Hamas would like to see as many of its own citizens hurt in the Israeli attack. But Israel will attack and will take back all of the area from the border down to the Wadi, but it's not going to be easy because of all the rubble in the streets. The strength is with the defense in such an urban environment. Tanks are more or less useless in this kind of environment, so it's going to be difficult.
Also, Colonel, just quickly, we only have a few moments left here, but we did have this information coming from Hamas that some of the hostages have been killed in these strikes. How do you balance that with a ground invasion, not knowing where they are? Or what do you think is happening right now in terms of intelligence to understand where they are before this takes place?
Well, intelligence is difficult to get inside Gaza. Whatever informants previously got information that probably no longer exist. I think Israel and most observers think that Israel will continue to pound Hamas locations. We have to be, and they are, realistic about whether or not they'll be able to get any of the hostages out because Hamas has said they're not going to release them.
All right, Colonel Jack Jacobs, thank you very much for joining us. Well, here closer to home, local and federal law enforcement agencies across the U.S. are stepping up their patrols of Jewish houses of worship, businesses, and Israeli diplomatic buildings.
This is mainly because the former leader of Hamas has called for today to be a so-called global day of anger in support of the attack on Israel. Calls for attacks in the U.S. have intensified online in the past couple days. Officials say they're not taking any chances this weekend.
We have directed the NYPD to surge additional resources to schools, houses of worship, to ensure that they are safe.
There is currently no intelligence showing any active threats in New York. But in a moment fraught like this, we will continue to exercise elevated vigilance and impose measures to deter any potential violence.
Historically, such calls for action or for a so-called day of rage have produced large demonstrations and unrest in other parts of the world, but have not led to large-scale attacks in the U.S. in the past. We have much more ahead here on Morning News Now. Later this hour, it is sure to be out of this world. We're going to tell you about the big lunar event that'll have millions of people looking up this weekend.
At first, though, after the break, Republicans back to square one in their search for a new House Speaker. We will tell you why up next. Stay with us.
Welcome back. It is back to the drawing board today for House Republicans. That's because House Majority Leader Steve Scalise dropped his bid to be the next House Speaker. The decision came just 24 hours after Scalise secured the GOP nomination, defeating Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan in a closed-door vote. House Republicans are set to meet again this morning to discuss their next steps. For Scalise, concerns were growing over whether he could win the speakership in a full House vote. He addressed reporters last night after a closed-door meeting with fellow Republicans.
I'm withdrawing my name as a candidate for the Speaker designee. If you look at over the last few weeks, if you look at where our conference is, there's still work to be done. Our conference still has to come together and is not there.
NBC News congressional correspondent Julie Sirkin joins us now with the latest developments. Julie, good morning. So earlier this week, Scalise seemed confident he had enough support. Certainly not the case anymore. What happened behind closed doors that led to this decision?
Yeah, well, Steve Scalise just couldn't get to 217. He, remember, just won half of the votes, a little bit over than that from Jim Jordan. Behind closed doors on Wednesday, he worked all of Wednesday night, all of Thursday. Yesterday, we were outside multi-hour conference meetings in which Scalise was working the room, working the phones. He was trying to meet with allies. He was trying to get to pick off some of those no's, but in the end, he just couldn't get there. And there was some bad blood behind the scenes between him and Jim Jordan. Scalise aides thinking that Jordan perhaps didn't work as hard to get Scalise those votes to pick off some of his own support. Scalise, in the end, of course, withdrawing his name. Now it's a big question mark of what happens next. Republicans are set to meet this morning at 10, but I got to tell you guys, it's not looking likely like a vote on the floor will happen anytime soon.
So is Congressman Jim Jordan now the front runner for the job? Is anyone else emerging as a favorite?
Yeah, that's the big question. Look, there are a few others throwing their hat in the ring, like Rep. Mike Johnson, for example, Congressman Byron Donalds, a freshman of Florida. But really, Jim Jordan here is considered the front runner. Remember, he still has the former president's backing. Jordan is really seen as somebody who can unify the hard right, the most conservative of the conference. Certainly a problem that Kevin McCarthy had when he was Speaker, a problem Steve Scalise had in trying to pick off those votes. We're talking about such small numbers here. I mean, this is really just 4% or so of the entire Republican conference, but with such a slim majority, it really shows you how every single vote counts. And there was so much frustration yesterday, cursing inside of the room, members coming out with high emotions, tensions flaring. I mean, this is really a Republican conference that is ungovernable at this point.